Okay, I'm going to call to order the August 10th, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting for Maidencreek Township. We're going to start by asking everybody to rise for a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You all may be seated. Hey, before we get started, I just have to make a few announcements here. We had a personnel executive session on 7/24/23. On August 8th of 2023, we had a discussion on 2 potential litigation legal matters. August 10th, 2023, personnel matters before and after. And before our meeting this evening, that was today is the 10th, right?
That's right.
So,
I'm sorry, I wrote that in the weeds.
So, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Can I just add one thing? When I uploaded it yesterday, I uploaded a version that didn't include the PFM presentation and the records destruction resolution. Can you just amend the agenda, just so you're cool on the 24 hours?
I'll amend my motion to approve the agenda, subject to adding the PFM presentation and the resolution for the destruction of certain records.
I'll second that.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move the destruction records to the end, just so you're aware of that.
Is it
It's
not?
for-
Yes.
It is almost.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, everybody has those on their agenda. It's just
It's
that
just
I
you didn't add
messed
it.
up.
It wasn't
I
on
messed up.
Okay, so moving on to the treasurer's report and bill list for July of 2023. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Do we do the meetings?
Yeah, we do. Oh, there was the meeting
Skip the
minutes.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting?
Yeah.
July 13th?
Testing us out.
I'll make a motion, subject to, there were some typographical type
Yep.
corrections
Yeah.
that were submitted to the board at the table.
Those revisions are on the one that were on the table.
Right, that's
Right.
what.
Right.
I'll second it.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to move to public comment first. Anything on the agenda that anybody wants to have any public comment on? We're going to start at row 1 when we go back through. As we get to you, if you would come forward and give your name and address, and then you can address what you're going to discuss. Anybody in row 1? Anybody in row 2?
Name Todd Tanis, T-A-N-I-S, 345 Cornerstone Drive, Landon. I'm gonna talk about that sinkhole that's in the back.
Is this on your property?
No, this is on, what do you call that, catch basin in the back?
The detention pond.
It's supposed to belong to somebody else,
Okay.
but all your water is going into it. You created the sinkhole with your water, and we're getting it all in our basements. Now, my neighbor blew his basement up, that's how much water's coming through. I get 5 feet, I had 6 pumps running. I pumped out 16,000 gallons of water an hour, and I couldn't keep up with it. That's how much water's coming through that freaking sinkhole. Now, there's 4 houses that are affected by it up there in Cornerstone. And they tell me that you guys wash your hands of it, you guys want nothing to do with it. Now, who the hell's gonna take care of it? I ain't gonna take care of it. It's on other guy's property. How did he get stuck with a holding pond?
So,
That contractor that put it in there must be a pretty smart character. Or the township got their fingers involved there somewhere. But this is what, 20 years ago? Or
yeah. So to the best of
I've been having trouble with that now for 20 years since I lived here. It's been getting more and more every time. In 2020, we had that storm, the 100-year storm. Now we got another 100-year storm. The 100-year storm in 2020, I got 3 feet. This guy come in, I didn't know there was a sinkhole back there until I saw the contractor leaving. he filled it full of dirt. I get all the dirt in the basement, it took me I'm still working in my basement for over a month, getting that dirt out and ripping my walls out. The guy next to me, he's having a hell of a time. He wants to walk out from his house. I mean, all from the sinkhole, and that's your water coming in.
Well,
We're
Well, it's not our water, but
It's your
exactly
water,
is
it's
the
coming down the road, it's
The
your
retention
storm sewer.
basin located on Calabria Drive.
Who's the water is? Christ, Jesus Christ, that's whose water is?
The Lord controls all water, but that's
Huh?
beside the point. I think, Mr. Tanis, you're already alluding to the fact that, I'm trying to minus that street, so I'll look directly at you, I'm sorry. You're alluding to the retention basin on Calabria Drive that works for that development. That retention basin is owned and maintained privately by the homeowner.
Yeah, he got stuck with it.
To the best of my knowledge, I believe that was part of the sale agreement. That was not something that the township had a part in. In addition to that, the township has been in contact with the property owner to let him know that it's his responsibility to fill it. He acknowledged that. He, to my knowledge, has started to fill it. I think you're alluding to contractors that may have been there more recently.
I haven't seen one there yet.
So you said
I'm
you
talking
noticed it after
back
the
in
contract.
2020, they had a contractor.
Okay,
They
alright.
filled it full of dirt.
So
And all that dirt came in my basement
Yeah.
and my neighbor's basement.
So I know that they have begun working with the contractor. I don't know if they have finished the work yet to fill in the sinkhole.
What they're gonna do, who's gonna supervise? You guys gonna go out there and make sure they put flowable concrete in there or something instead of dirt?
Well, they
There's
wouldn't,
somebody's gotta take control here.
yeah. The township has the ability to oversee some of the work and to be a part of regulating that work. The property owner did work in the past to fix it. So if that's something that the board would like myself and Tom to work with them to make sure they do it in a way that we think is sufficient, that's something that we could do.
Well, I mean, the taxes we pay, something's gotta be done, cause you got an engineer here, you figure out how much water's running through there, and next thing you know, our house is gonna go down.
Why wouldn't they have to submit their plans to the township anyway we would have to expedite, but why wouldn't they?
It's private property, it's a private restoration.
It's no
private
different
property.
if they're building an addition on their house, right?
It's not a construction, it's not a structure that would be, it's not a permitted item or something that is regulated.
Well, the law has changed in the last 20 years. Now with every development, if there's a basin, we have a stormwater management plan that would allow us to go on and fix it ourselves and charge the landowner.
Mhm.
That didn't happen 20 years ago.
Right.
So the laws have progressed to a point. Today, you're right, we would have that power.
Right.
With this being a 20-year-old development, we don't have that legal power
Right.
for a ground issue like that.
How big is this sinkhole?
It's pretty good size, I was there.
Significant.
Pretty good
Yeah.
size,
It's
bigger than that table.
Oh.
Deep and deep.
And deep.
And it
I
takes a
don't
lot
know
of
if
water.
it's as wide as this table, but
It's big.
it's
That's not wide.
probably
It's
6
big.
feet wide.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
there, it's big, deep,
Yeah.
how deep is it?
It's unclear, it's unclear.
No-
It's
no
deep
one went
enough that
into
you
it,
can't
doesn't-
see.
from what you can see, it's probably 6-8 foot, but it
You can
goes
see the
down.
major run.
It goes
I
down.
could definitely fit in it.
Because that also depends on how to fix it too.
Sure.
Yeah.
As a safety issue, Tom, where do we stand with that?
Well, again, it's on private property, and the property owner has been in contact with the township,
Yep.
and there's been no indication that he's walking away from it, or he's
Yeah.
saying it's not his responsibility. He's acknowledged that it is responsibility, and
Yeah.
he's gonna take care of the
Is he the
problem.
original owner that built that house, do you know?
That I don't know.
No, this guy just bought it, he can't even speak English, they're from Mexico. He had no idea he bought that.
Well, when you say he just bought it, he bought it before the
Five-
previous
five-
time
five
he
or
had to
six-
fix
5 or
it as
6
well.
years ago, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, for the purpose of them, being responsible, they have done that work already in the past.
But
Somebody's gotta help us out, for crying,
The
we
point
pay a
being
lot
is-
of taxes here.
The point being is, we don't know what
Somebody's gotta help us out
the
with
agreement
that.
was. We don't know what the original agreement was from the original homeowner when it was built.
Well, that would be a private agreement.
But that's what I'm saying, is we don't know what that agreement was, is what I'm getting at. Do we understand how that transaction happened?
It's part of the land development plan that was approved at the time, right?
Right.
We should.
Well,
It's
Somebody has
it's
to-
not a surprise to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a surprise to the property
It's
owner.
in their
Yeah,
deed.
right,
It's in the
right.
deed,
It's in
but
the
it's
deed.
part-
It's on the
Yeah.
plan, it was approved.
Understood.
It was part of an
that
approved
way,
plan,
that
okay,
the
so
property
that's-
owner is responsible for the
Right.
basin.
Understood, okay.
Well, it would seem to me that given the magnitude of this, that the township should have some involvement to make sure that it is
You should, yeah.
properly fixed and timely fixed, because it's could have a
Just-
serious impact on a lot of people.
There are standard sinkhole
Remediations.
remediation
Mhm.
details provided by the county, and those can be shared with the property owner.
Okay.
Oh, that would be good.
But it doesn't sound like that they would fall before. If they're just going in there and dumping dirt in there.
Right.
They're putting a Band-Aid on the problem. So that's what I was getting at is, you know, I think that their plans at least, or their contractor should be submitting a plan or permit.
Well, we give him the.
Not necessarily
the
permanent
ti-
plan.
the typical plan, the
Yeah.
typical sinkhole repair.
But it's only a suggestion.
Well, we give it, he should be following that.
Okay. That's okay.
And we can follow up with the property owner
Yeah.
and the contractor to see that that repair is being properly conducted.
Right.
So why don't we do that?
Okay, we will.
Because there also seems to be some investigative work, if it's not clear exactly how big this is.
We'll follow up.
No, I know, but that's what I mean, that's,
Taking all the water for you guys are putting into it. You know, is there any way you can get that water from coming back in? Throw a couple 45s in that 30-inch pipe, throw it out in the street until we get this survived, because you fixed it.
I don't know if we
It's
can do
gonna
that
take our
either.
house the hell out. That's what's gonna happen. The next 100-year storm might happen tomorrow.
well, that is the
Yeah.
concern, because we've had four
And-
major
and-
storms in the last
Yeah.
3 years.
They're coming faster.
No,
and
I
faster.
know, which is.
We didn't plan any of them.
I know you guys didn't mind it, but I'm getting about half scared, and my wife is scared, and the neighbor, she's ready to leave the house. They're gonna walk out of that house. I mean, you oughta see that basement. It friggin' blew up. That's how much, it come up 3 foot in here and split right in half. That's how much pressure is
In the
going on.
basement.
His basement. My basement, I'm holding together. I'm praying to God nothing happens there, because I'm 82 years old, and I can't afford this crap, you know.
I understand. I understand. Believe me,
Yeah, we need help. We gotta pay these taxes. We need help, you know. I don't mind paying taxes, but my God, do something, help somebody, you know.
Well, our staff is gonna
Yeah.
follow
But-
up with the homeowner and give them,
It's
the
gotta be done right.
guidance on how to.
Throw a
do it.
little creek in there or
but you
something.
gotta understand that we can't just come onto people's property willy-nilly and say, we're gonna do this or do that, because we don't have that right by law.
It's your water.
But
it's your
not.
water.
Our water goes through water pipes.
No, your water comes down at, who's responsible for the runoff? Who put the pipes in the ground for the runoff? It's gotta be Maidencreek
Developer.
Township, right?
Developer.
Huh?
Developer did.
The folks who built those
So who's
homes.
responsible? Developer?
No,
Then you guys gotta go after him.
well,
I mean,
some of those developers aren't even around anymore.
Well,
That's
listen,
the
the
problem.
regulations were different.
Yeah,
20
so
years
they
ago.
did what they were
They-
required
A
to
bunch
do
of
back
crooks,
then.
yeah, I know. I'll work there. I've been in construction 60 years. I know
Okay.
exactly what's going on.
I mean, we're gonna try to do what we can, but we can't promise you that we're gonna fix it, because we don't have that.
If you can't fix it, try to keep the water out. Throw a couple 45s in that thing for me and throw it out in the street.
Yeah, we can't even do
Can't even
that.
do that, huh?
You know.
Well, how about if I buy a backhoe? I'll rent a backhoe and I'll dig the corner out.
Mr. Tanis, we're gonna follow up on it.
If it
Yeah.
belongs to that guy, if he owns all that land, he'll give me permission to dig that corner out. And we'll run the water right out on the Schaefer Road. How's that? Can we do that?
No.
Yeah.
It's a state road.
Heavens, no.
We're gonna follow up.
I'd rather see it
Are
out.
you being serious?
Yes, I am being
No, you
serious.
cannot do that.
Your house is not sitting there where it's gonna come down.
I understand that,
you
but
know?
you can't do something.
I'm
that
getting
is
tired of tearing
against-
my house apart. You know, I just feel
DEP
stupid.
is who regulates everything with the water,
Yeah.
and they regulate us too.
Yeah.
And they put people in jail for stuff like that.
Well, I'll go to jail. I'll drive.
You don't wanna do that.
If it's gonna tear my house down, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna lose? 82 years old, what the hell am I gonna lose? I mean, somebody's gotta help out. Somebody's gotta help out. We're paying taxes, let's do something.
Mr. Tanis, we told you we're
We'll look
looking
at
into
it.
it.
Appreciate it.
We're
Thank you.
gonna look into it and help
Thank
you
you.
out.
Let it go at that.
Thank you.
I just live a couple miles, about a half a mile.
We know where that is.
Thank you for bringing it up. Anybody else in row 2? Row 3? Yes, sir.
Hi, Richard Deming, I live on Southview Road. I was just wondering, you guys have come to anything yet as far as the water, to take care of any kind of plan for the runoff?
So
If you're, or I'm sure you know, it's nothing that happens overnight, but,
It doesn't.
I mean, I can't, well, I could afford the wall now, there's nothing there, but,
Let
I
me,
mean, I couldn't afford
let me
to
preface this.
lose another one, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
I stopped in with Mr. Demick and saw his issues,
Yeah, it's pretty,
the whole back wall of his home is gone.
Yeah.
It's laying on the floor.
well, it's
So,
cleaned up now,
I-
it looks
I
pretty
saw-
good.
I saw they were working on it, yeah.
The floor looks good anyway.
I've
but,
I've been from afar keeping an eye on things and,
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
I'm sure, I don't know if you have any, I'm sure you discussed it, but I don't,
we do have a larger discussion on the agenda
It
for
is
later
later
in
in
the
the
meeting.
Okay.
And if the board wanted to open up, comments after that too, we could probably.
Yeah, we can do that.
okay,
So we'll discuss it when we get to that point with the
All right.
FEMA and FEMA and all that.
okay, thank you. Pardon? There ain't no wall.
Anybody in row 4?
Hi, I'm Yvonne Scalise. I live at 213 Spirit Court. Hi, Hunter. First of all, I want to say thank you to Keith, wherever you are. Did a beautiful job cleaning out the creek. On Monday, they were there for the bulk of the day. Sunday, my husband and I spent about 2.5 hours. I literally was under the bridge trying to relocate stones. We pulled out 2 wheelbarrows. We attempted to pull whatever that metal piece was from a sprint car. Couldn't get that out. And there was also a Craftsman lawnmower that we went back to the house to take a break because my husband ended up with heat exhaustion. We never made it back, but then they showed up Monday morning. This is the 5th time that we've been flooded. Our backyard looked like a war zone from Ukraine, to the point where we had to hire an excavator to excavate the backyard, to then hydro-seed it, and then pray to God that nothing else is gonna happen, that we have to spend another $6,000-7,000 to make our backyard. Plus, we had water in the basement again. So I'm just wondering whether there's gonna be something done with this bridge, since when I moved in there in 1993, I was told, oh, they're replacing that bridge because this is just a construction bridge. And here we go, it's 2023, 30 years later, and still the construction bridge. And the creek, I know, Hunter, you said there's no money to do any type of dredging in the
Not
creek.
yet, not yet.
Oh, yeah. There are areas in that creek where with no water, it is level with our backyards. So, and we've been fortunate. I actually was in the creek cleaning it up the Friday and Saturday before the storm that we got on that Sunday the 9th. But, you know, I'm gonna be 69 years old, my husband's 66, yes, I did rob the cradle. But, but I should not be out there doing that, you know, and he has health issues, he shouldn't be doing it, so. So I'm just waiting to hear what you guys have to say, but I just wanted to voice my opinion.
Do you mind if I go first, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead.
I did get your text message. We looked back at pictures and we found that the wheelbarrows and the more obvious pieces were not there the last couple of times. We're not sure how they got
Well,
there,
I was gonna say,
but.
and because that's what I said to you, I said,
Yeah.
I saw at least 4 or 5 people in that creek.
Yeah.
But weren't you in it, Dave?
I was down at one
Yeah,
point.
and you
yeah.
didn't see them. They
No.
weren't there.
No,
So-
not when I was
You
there.
can see what?
I did see,
Wheelbarrows.
I was there, I was in the water too. They,
And they were right there at the front. Like, one was so embedded in some old blue one, and another one was a true
Yeah.
temper, and
So we're not sure how
How
or
it
when
got
they
there?
got there, but we appreciated what you just said, and I know that Keith made a special effort to make sure that the guys got out there.
they did.
And, you know, I appreciate you saying thank you for them doing that, and
Oh, it was
we
great.
heard your concern,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to
And I like
preface
the
that.
idea that I heard the saws going, that they were cutting the metal that is
I want
raised
to
up.
piggyback off of what she's saying before you.
Can you just
And
give your
I'm
name
right
real
next
quick,
door.
just for the benefit of the minutes, can you just give us your name quick?
Yep,
Lori Hirschberger, 209 Spirit Court.
she lives right next door to me.
I just want to piggyback before you start answering. And I have to apologize, I have a migraine and I'm disabled, so I probably can't stand here long.
That's okay.
We've been here 30 years. We paid our taxes every year. We caused no problems for the community. When we moved in, we were told it was a construction bridge. I'm right across from the playground for those who don't know.
Right, we know we're.
So I spent 10 grand for the privilege of taking out my in-ground pool and taking down the fence. I'm disabled, retired. We cannot continue to take care of what we take care of here. But for 30 years, I've paid my taxes. And for 30 years, I've come to meetings, and for 30 years, I was told that bridge was gonna be replaced. And it has not. I know that, you know, there's considerations, but it's been 30 years. How many times do we go through this? I am retired disabled. I did not plan to retire when I did. I got a disability. I planned to save money. You finally pay off your house, you think, oh, now I'll save for my retirement. We've lost over $15,000 worth of stuff, which of course is not covered. Heck, we were just fixing our fence from the last time. That is terrible back there. Anybody can see, and I will say, the problem was when they built the half a doubles or duplexes or whatever you want to call up the street from us. Never had a problem before that, because it was ground that was wooded, that absorbed. What did the township do? Oh, they wanted to make more money, so they put in those half a doubles. When they put them in, they then put the beautiful macadam slide for all of that water to come in, and then to try to go in that little culvert 2 doors up from us. That was never meant for that. Never.
That's your swale.
I mean, yes, it's a swale aside of her house. The 3 of us live together. This has to stop. Something needs to be done. That bridge either needs to be replaced, which I was told 30 years ago it would, or shut it down. I'm sorry if you're going to inconvenience a few people. What about those of us who have lived there and have paid and have done everything responsible? You're not helping us. But each time all we hear is, act of God, act of God didn't put that bridge in. Please stop passing it off. You have devalued my property so much. If I were to sell my house tomorrow, if I could have charged every person that drove by to take pictures, I could have paid my bills. Do something, please.
Tom, as a follow-up, are you aware of the status with this bridge? 'Cause
Well, the bridge was inspected by the state, and there was a state bridge inspection. And they provided.
That there's a crack in it, and that 2 years ago they did the same inspection and did nothing. We talked to the inspector.
No, that's not what I was gonna say. Their inspection gives different rates as to things that you're supposed to do, and give different classifications as to urgent, not so urgent, and so forth.
No, I'm aware of that.
So the two items that they put on there to be done immediately is the removal of the sediment upstream, downstream, in the bridge itself. And then also to cut off the metal that is bent up, that is creating a blockage or creates a place for everything to get lodged against. I would recommend on top of that pouring a concrete, what do you call it? Cutoff wall at the underneath that lip, tie the steel into and keep the water from going underneath it as an additional immediate repair to it. Is there, I don't believe anybody's inspection is indicating that it's going to fail or collapse immediately. It's not in that type of condition, but it is, and it will continue to be an obstruction. So, when you have these types of these 50-year, 100-year plus storms, and we have as much material moving through that stream as what we have, it's going to be an issue.
So if we were to remove the bridge, that's gonna open it all up. Is that gonna create any other dilemmas though?
Well, for traffic, you're gonna have the obvious traffic, you know.
Traffic, you're in a car, so you can go
You
another
can
way.
you can drive other directions.
Motor-
2 minutes to get out.
And, you know, every community there has multiple ingress and egress
Right.
points. So I don't believe it creates a safety.
Plus, we're getting complaints about speeding, that unless they're jumping over it,
Yeah,
that won't be an issue.
right.
Now, just to let you know, it doesn't have to be a very bad storm. Like, there are times, I mean, it's like a regular thing. We get rain, my husband and I walk over. I crawl down on that one piece, okay, and I throw things up to my husband to get it cleaned out. Because it's that, whatever that diamond type thing that's
That
right there.
little
Everything
cement
gets,
square
there's like, whatever, it's not,
between
yeah.
the two.
Everything gets stuck there, and the minute things get stuck, whether you have that silver thing cut down, the minute all that debris comes, that's it. It cuts it off, and then where does it go? It starts backing up into Lori's yard, goes further into my yard, goes into my neighbor here, Ann's yard. You know, it's just, so it's not just 100-year storms, it's happened several times.
And we recognize that there's a problem.
Yeah.
But we recognize it going all the way down to 73.
Oh, well, Hunter told me 73 needs to be cleaned out too, but that's PennDOT.
We can't touch it.
I know, you can't touch it.
That's,
I know.
so we're stepping up our impetus toward getting that done.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to work or not, I don't know.
Maybe my husband and I should do theirs next.
Can we stop paying our property taxes? Can we start recouping anything? We get no help. We pay everything in good faith that we're going to be helped and taken care of. For 30 years, I've been told that that bridge was gonna be replaced, 30 years.
Are you aware of anything like that, Tom?
I
That
never-
it's supposed to be a
I-
construction bridge or anything like that?
Never,
I mean,
never.
they-
heard.
That's what we were told by Saunders, who built it, and that's what we were told.
That's the problem.
Well, that was a problem,
That's
but
not-
I
that's
didn't
not
bring
who
him
it
into
was.
the township, so
No, that's not who it was.
we were told that back then, and it's just been a continuing problem, and you can't just let it go, you can't. So now I spent 10 grand to get my back reseeded. Well, I guess next storm, I'll be standing out there watching that seed wash down the road.
I can tell you this, on our list tonight, we're gonna be discussing that a little bit further down here.
Okay.
I can't give you an answer now because as we get to it, more information will be divulged to us so that we have an idea. I can't even tell you we're gonna make a decision tonight, because anytime a decision like this is made, it needs to deal with the state agencies. And it needs permits to be able to allow us to do that. I mean, you're dealing with a waterway, so we
But
don't.
that was never meant to handle that volume of water.
I'm not gonna argue that with you.
Look 2 doors away at that little thing, and you put that beautiful slide in there to bring all that water down, and it just,
She's talking about up at the very top.
you know, it's just, oh well.
Everything was meant to be a remedy at some point, and some of those remedies have changed over the years. We didn't come out and say, hey, listen, we're looking for somebody to build houses. Somebody bought the land, and with the ability of them owning the land, they expanded upon it because that was their business. So they wanted to build the properties on there, and it worked. There were a number of years that we had tremendous growth here. We can't stop it. We're not permitted to stop it.
What do you follow? Because back then, you were one of the few townships that followed Southern Conference,
Southern Conference.
the coding for, I forget what you
Well,
call
back,
it.
are you talking about the building code?
Yes,
Okay, so way back in the day, there was a Southern Building Code
Yes.
before BOCA, or equal to BOCA. So Southern Building Code wasn't enforced, but it has nothing to do with stormwater.
oh, no, but it was
That
a
strictly
far
the
less
house.
criteria.
It was-
Because even in our house, they did some things that they weren't supposed to do. And at the time, I came to the township about it,
Yeah.
and they said, oh, well, it's Southern Conference, but when I asked for a copy of the code book, they could not provide me with one.
Yeah.
So is it no longer, is it BOCA now?
It's the
Or whatever.
uniform.
Yeah,
it's-
UCC.
It's the UCC, but now the state has
Currently.
adopted uniform construction code. which wasn't in effect.
I'll go
back
sit
then.
down, I realize I've taken enough of your time, but please don't just pass it off.
We-
Oh,
we've
we're
been-
not, I mean,
We've been
there's
discussing
been
it
a
for
lot
the
of work
last
done and a
several
lot.
months.
It's on the
We've
agenda.
had meetings on this, and we have it
Yeah.
on the agenda to discuss even further, because, no, when we sympathize with, I had property, damage too from the flood on my farm.
I think we all did.
And I think most of us had, so many people in the township had such a,
But mine happened ever since they built up there and has been continuing.
We're
But-
still waiting to hear from FEMA, and we'll get into that a little bit later too, so if you can hang in there for a little bit, we'll get to it.
Thank you for your time, I do
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Sorry for your,
Yeah, nobody wants to see anybody go through.
no, exactly.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
good, good. Coming out, coming through. Just, my name is Ann Santiago, I live at 217, so it's Lori, then Yvonne, and then me. I'm right next to that culvert or swale that's there. They've talked about everything already, but there's two things I wanted to bring up. So the first thing, that since this flooding that just happened, the creek bed has risen, like to my eye. Of course, I don't know the measurements, because I don't know what the original creek bed depth was, etc. But when I go to look at it now, it looks much wider, the creek, and much more, like the sand has been built up a lot more. So my thought is that with additional storms and rains, it's going to take less to flood, because there's a lot more dirt down on that bottom than there used to be. Because it's, for us that we're constantly looking at it, I could tell. It looks much more, I don't want to say shallow, but there's much more dirt and mud on the bottom, so it won't take much water for it to go over the banks. So that's one thing. The other things.
There are no banks.
So the only other thing that I wanted to mention was the swale that goes aside of my house, culvert swale, I'm not sure of the exact word, but it goes under the road over to, I guess, those doubles. But it was just dug out and regraded, I wanna say maybe 2 years ago, a year or 2 years ago. And it's supposed to, by design, from my understanding, go from that other neighborhood under the road, down and then into the creek, and then down, to 73. But what happens is that when the bridge gets clogged up, that swale goes backwards and across my yard. So rather than watching it going down and into the creek and then down, where it's supposed to go, I see water rushing up that swale and across my yard. So my entire backyard, around the side of my house, which is poured concrete, which is raised up, it's like a higher basement. But we sat there and watched it instead. So I had like two rivers coming through. It was coming back. It was coming back from the swale in my entire backyard, like all the way like up to my house was like this much water. So, and then that brought the neighbor's shed tumbling towards my house. Thank God it got caught in the little trees that were there. But those are the two things. The swale doesn't seem to be functioning properly. I don't know what can be done about that, because ideally it's supposed to take the water, down and out and not up and up. So it's almost like a toilet backing up. It's backing up into my yard, not the toilet, but the water, but just for a visual. So that's that. The swale is never functioned. That's why they regraded it. So it's still not working properly. It just, basically, the water sits there, I watch it rise, and then it overcomes the banks, and then it backs up and just totally takes over my yard. So yeah, those are just the two things I wanted to add.
Do you know who regraded the swale? Was it the township?
Yeah, Keith was involved. It was just real recent.
And you did a good job on that too, Keith.
No, it looked good. It looked promising. It's too much water. It's too much water, honestly.
I'll confirm what Ann said. From where that exits Spirit Court to the stream, there's almost no pitch there.
Right.
Because of the stream bank filling in so much.
Right, so, yeah.
So that's why it backs
Oh,
up.
okay, that makes
We
sense.
can't get any, we couldn't get any, we did it like 2 years ago, we couldn't get any pitch in there because your stream bank is
It's
here
gone, yeah.
from your storm drain. There's no way to go. So the stream bank has filled in so much. That used to be much lower before.
I mean, we're gonna talk about it more in length too, but since all this storm event happened, I've spent a lot of time out with the guys, the engineer. I've pretty much walked every inch of that creek from almost top to bottom. And there is the same issue you're having there with the way the creek bed is risen. We have it at the park too. There's some spots in the walking trail at the park, you can kind of look over and you'll see water flowing higher than the walking trail. So we're aware of it, and I do grading and drainage for a living, so we're held up with permitting fees, and the state has said they're gonna expedite that. This is the state we're talking about. So we legally can't go into these creeks and do any kind of, we can pull trees and stuff like that, but we can't go in there and change the shape of that creek bed until the state goes and gives us approval to do so. We're hoping that they give us full permission to go there and dredge it out completely. And then we gotta sit back and take a look at, you know, I think, I don't know that we're gonna get permission to do the whole thing either, that's the thing. So we're gonna have to take care of things in a strategic manner and that's one of them for sure, is coming down along the backside of Spirit and Land Meadows Parkway, because it's bad, and there's no banks like you said, and quite frankly, the people that are on Land Meadows Parkway are also they're getting what's coming up your way is because they're flooded at capacity because they're lower in elevation than you guys are. So they are getting way more than if you have it at your house. Just think the neighbors behind you are really digging out of it.
And this is a whole process, because if you look at 73, if that gets full, everything's coming back. That's why you're seeing the water come back at you, because it has no place to go. And every time it rains, you're gonna get sediment from anything, from the mountains or whatever. It's gonna wash down across the roads into the waterways, and it's gonna end up in your streams. That gets cleaned out every so often, but it's all done with the permission of the state again, because they're the ones that regulate all that, and the Berks County Conservation District. So our engineers are well aware of it, we're aware of it. It's just a process, and unfortunately the process, when you deal with state government, does not go fast.
Where does it go underneath 73? I don't think I ever like.
Goes down toward Dries Road, and goes down in and into the school eventually.
Okay.
Down by Coca-Cola there.
And I was gonna piggyback what Dave said, you know, you're always taught that, you know, for every action there's a reaction, and that's what's gonna happen, quite frankly, is you know, if we get in here and we're allowed to go in there and clean out the creeks up here, it's hopefully gonna work well and it's gonna be great. What's gonna happen downstream? So we have a lot of that, Tom has a lot of that to figure out, and you know, the state has said they're making traction on the 73 thing. What I'm gonna say to you guys is get a hold of the state. There's a website, there's a link, didn't you post it there on your site? There's a link out there, get on there and send it in, send the complaints in, because it's coming from us as a municipality, but when it comes to them in numbers, things get moving along faster. And I quite frankly, I think this is newsworthy. I really truly think that maybe we should get some of the news guys out there taking a look at this and put a little pressure on PennDOT, put a little pressure on the state, saying, hey, we gotta get this taken care of, because that is the choke point. That's what's holding this up.
And the further you go up the PennDOT ladder, the more it matters. I'll tell you that. So, hands are tied all over the place, and no matter what happens, when you're dealing with DEP and everybody else, I mean, every regulatory agency has a play in this. And until you get through all those channels, it's time consuming. It really is. And we didn't ask for the water, none of us did, none of us here did. But we have to deal with it. So the process, you know, it's not just as easy as going in with a shovel and opening up a hole and saying, let's watch it go away. Because like you were saying, there's a hole, well, that took some of the water, but then it washes up and comes somewhere else. So there's all kind of processes involved. What's that?
You wanna see pictures of that sinkhole?
I was there. I saw it firsthand.
How you see it?
No, I didn't see it.
So,
You see it?
so even with that hole, it ate some of the water, but it came back with a vengeance somewhere else. So, you know, the engineers are working on it, we're working on trying to get solutions, we're trying to find money. You know, money's a hard thing to come by these days, we all know it, so.
I believe I heard you ask the question where you can reach out to.
Yeah.
So if you go to the PennDOT's website, you can go to District 5 contact information.
District 5?
District 5.
Thank you.
Now,
Fine, okay.
So there's the Temple office and the Allentown office. You probably want to call both.
All both.
Call what?
Yeah,
So,
including the elected officials.
in District 5, they cover multiple counties. Berks is only one of them.
Okay.
District 5 is headquartered in Allentown and Lehigh County. What you want to do is if you want to reach out to PennDOT directly, you want to call the PennDOT Temple office. You want to call the office phone. So if you Google PennDOT District 5 contact information, you'll find it. It's the very first one. You want to call the PennDOT office in Berks County, which is at the Temple office. And you also want to call the Allentown office as well. You can go to any type of public complaint channel or any of the planning channels, and they'll direct you about who you need to talk to, or they'll share the message with the folks that need to hear it as well.
And your state officials,
Yeah.
get on them. Like I said, I will say, all of us have been pretty unified in this whole ordeal, and it's been traumatic for everybody in the community. It's, you know, some people had greater issues than others, and we understand, and it's great seeing the community pull together and helping clean up. You know, I was out that night and watching, there's Mennonites that were out there cleaning up trash and garbage, and, you know, but it's a shame that it takes a disaster like that for the neighborhoods to pull together. And, you know, what you were saying about the sprint car thing, it was in there, I was there when our road crew pulled out a John Deere
At
rider
John
mower.
Deere, yeah.
Yeah, they pulled that out, you know, and like that was in a case where his shed got demolished and so
That was all a
forth.
result of the storm.
But some of the things that I witnessed firsthand walking around are I'm gonna say, it's gonna sound horrible and blatant, but it is blatant disregard for stormwater measures that were put in there. There were some spots that the builders might have put swales in or whatever, and people went and put flower beds in there, planted arborvitae. Sheds, yeah. And hey, it looks good for you as a landowner, but you just negated the whole point of having that stormwater measurement put in there. And, you know,
I know.
I sympathize with everybody,
The
but
one that's up past all the, going up almost to Fleetwood Blandon Road, you know where it's like cement down in there, that swale?
Yep.
I know at one point, the township actually, the people that lived right along it, they got letters, this was years ago, and told them to stop going down there and cutting the grass. They didn't own that down there, because I think it was the DEP said, you don't want it, you want grass there. That will slow the water down, kind of grab some of the water. Now, whether some people are back doing it, because that was years ago.
was that part of that whole
It keeps the bank there
That's,
too.
Yeah,
that's
not-
stream bank.
restoration?
Right,
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to keep stream bank.
So what are we,
Grass and
what are we
stream
telling PennDOT, what are we telling them about cleaning up under 73?
Yeah,
And
just,
that's what we want to talk to them about.
And tell them about your experience.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
And
okay.
just write them an email, and, you know, the more people that put the pressure on, you know, like I said, it's a lot when there's an army coming at them, when it's one or two municipalities coming from the manager, you know, kind of gets, not that it's swept under the rug, but it gets put on their list to do. When you have a army of people sending emails, things tend to get done a lot faster, so.
Okay, thank you.
And your congressman, right away, I would tell you, because we have not heard from FEMA's action committee to deal with cost restoration. You know, this is unheard of, that it took this long and we still haven't heard anything. So I don't know if they're sleeping on the job or what's going on. But we normally would have heard something by now.
Oh,
They normally would have had teams on the ground. Am I right, Tom?
I have not experienced, you know,
Oh, okay.
what the response time is for FEMA to provide funding, or I've never had that before, so.
They've at least had camps set up within a few weeks of a disaster.
I know other places that
Yeah.
have received
Yes,
funding have already heard.
from this storm?
Well, yeah, but not in this area.
Not the
Okay.
state.
I think down towards Philadelphia.
Oh, so they did hear.
What happened down in Bucks County?
Yeah, yeah.
Down there.
Yes, sir.
Now, Willow Creek right there by Cornerstone, they keep planting trees. Why do they keep planting trees in that creek? If you put natural dams down through there. I remember a few years back, they put a hell of a bunch of trees down
Oh,
there.
in the Willow Creek, in
Yeah.
the meadow.
In the meadow down there.
And when the flood hits, all that grass gets against it, and you got natural dams. I mean, it backs water up like you wouldn't believe. How do you plant a tree in a wetland? I don't understand that.
Well, it sucks up water for one.
Yeah, I know that, but
And
it
it
also
holds-
stops water.
It holds the topsoil there too with the roots.
Yeah, but nothing gets washed out there. It just blocks up.
Yeah, well, and that's from further down.
And then comes,
If it were cleared further down, the water would flow a lot easier.
yeah.
Well, we're gonna touch on that then. So, anybody in the last row back there? We'll get through this and then we'll go through our meeting and we'll be hitting these points.
Tom Schneider, 262 Longleaf Drive. Sorry if I present this just as a visual so you can understand what I'm referring to. Back in April, I submitted plans to have a porch built on the back of my home. I'm a 24-year resident, just trying to do some improvement to my property, and was told that I didn't have the required setback. I can understand the reasoning for setbacks when you have a neighbor behind you don't want your house right on top of theirs. But in my case, there's nothing but a drainage field behind me, and it's like wide open. And I'm just looking for some common sense to allow me to do this. Hunter, I've been working with him a bit. He said he presented this to, can you elaborate on the rest of that?
Originally, you had applied for a variance and then withdrawn that application because we were hoping that we could do it in a more simple way with a zoning change. That was presented to the planning commission and they felt that variance process was the appropriate relief in this situation. I asked Tom if he could talk to Ty, and maybe even Ty can speak to it a little bit about what the planning commission's reasoning was. But I think what you're hoping to see from the board is that they would reconsider the matter or ask the planning commission to do so. But I think at this point it's important for you guys to know what the planning commission said. I was not there until the latter half of the meeting remotely, so I didn't actually hear what they said. But we had worked up a potential zoning change with Mike Rohr in Tom's office, the zoning officer. So I'll kind of leave it at that. Is that, do you want to add anything else, or?
No, that's fine. Yeah, just, I was told that the variance thing was $1,200. I'm looking at this to be like a $3,000 project, and I can't afford to gamble $1,200, and if it gets rejected, then there goes my money. So that's why I'm trying not to go that route.
Is this the same one as last month that we discussed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Do you know how far he missed the setback by, Tom? Or maybe you can recall?
I believe it's a 40-foot setback, and I would have 28 feet with my proposal.
And this is only a roof that you're putting on there, correct?
Well, no, I have, I would build a deck that would be covered with a roof,
But no sidewalls.
no sidewalls.
So it's a porch.
It's a structure. So it's still gonna be governed by your setback regulations.
Right.
Anything
The
that
pool,
is
the
closed.
pool's gone.
That's fine. Was there a deck around the pool?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I would want to repurpose the composite decking from that and make this porch with that.
Unfortunately, zoning applies to all properties in all zoning districts.
Right.
So changing the zoning, while might makes sense, common sense for one individual, now you're opening it up for everybody in that zoning district.
No, I get it.
And that's why, you have zoning hearing boards. He has, a good case to present to the board.
Was the deck approved for the pool?
Well, the pool setback is, I think, different than the structural one, and that's because
Well, I
of.
was getting there, because it was not attached to the house.
Accessory structures.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was attached to the house.
So if he puts himself doesn't attach to the house, does this go out the way?
Is it going any further than with the pool?
Well, I would say,
No, it's close.
if he wants to put the
Closer to the house.
deck he can put in, because there is provisions to allow the deck. And use the alternative is to have one of those retractable awnings.
I have one of
Why
those.
can't you build a roof and just not attach it to the house?
It's still a structure, it's still looked as a structure.
So the deck,
The
deck
will be
itself is allowed,
allowed.
it's
Will
just
be allowed.
it's just a roof on it. I
Once-
got
once you go
That's what I
to-
was looking at, like, looks like it's, okay.
But
Thank
you could go to retractable awning, and then it would not, that's not gonna be a structure or permitted, and
They only come out like 12 feet.
those are the alternatives that we could.
And just for everybody, so the way a zoning code's written is exactly what Tom said, is that you have to write them as they apply to every property. So they have to be almost generic in the sense that they're treating everybody the same, and that's quite frankly the purpose of a variance application, is to say, look, I'm different. This ordinance applies to me unfairly or differently than it would to somebody else, my property is unique, therefore I'm justified to have a variance. And I think, you know, the fact that you had a pool there before, the fact that you butt up against a drainage area, not another property, you're not buffering, you're not eating into them, or reasons why. And obviously I can't say what a zoning hearing board would do, but there are arguments to make in front of a zoning hearing board. But there's nothing this board can do other than either change the code or send it to the zoning hearing board. You can't approve this.
Right.
So we have no power to approve it.
So when's the zoning hearing board?
They only meet when they have to. So if you submitted an application, they would schedule a hearing.
This is the variant, the $1,200 thing
Yes.
again? So am I at a stage now, if I don't want to pay the $1,200, I can't do this? This is-
You could build a deck.
You can build a deck and you can have the
You can hold off on
retractable
building,
awning.
hold off on building the top.
Hold off on building the top?
You could come in today and get a building permit for the deck. You just can't build the roof.
Okay.
So you can bifurcate your structure, just have it prepared to build a roof later, and then come back later and get a zoning variance for just that if you would want.
Uh-huh. Okay. Is there anything to add that, like, that the zoning board thing, the only thing that sets that in process is if I do that variance permit?
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
that motion.
The application, yes.
All right, thank you.
You want your paperwork here?
All right, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, anybody else in the last row?
Well, I had a comment. I wanted to clarify the record because back in May, you had claimed that work that was done in the township Lowhead Dam had violated the law. And you had asked both the Pennsylvania Association of Township Supervisors and the Ethics Commission to intervene. And for the record, I wanted to read what both the Pennsylvania Association of Township Supervisors had said in a letter, saying that they don't offer legal advice to the township, its board members or its staff. They gave you other options, but they said specifically they don't intervene. And the same applies to the State Ethics Commission, that they would not offer an advisory opinion on the relatively minor maintenance work that was done on the township Lowhead Dam. So, and it's, that type of work is, well, and I'm just saying, that type of work is
I have not heard back on the
consistent.
complaint yet, though. So we're at that stage right now.
There is, in my opinion, and I think it's clear that the township is doing other work that involves the Willow Creek, involves flooding. This was very minor work in shoring up one side of a very small dam. And I just want the record to reflect that.
We are approaching this repair work with the Willow Creek properly with the appropriate permits, which wasn't followed the first time.
Right, and our township engineer, as I clarified before, didn't indicate a permit was needed, so.
Uh,
I just
No,
want
he
to make
didn't
sure.
clarify that. He said.
What?
He was never asked.
He gave a written description of the work that was needed to do the township Lowhead Dam maintenance, and he did not indicate that there was any permit required. So
He also asked you if you wanted it on the agenda, and you said no.
this was work that the township manager had the authority to approve, and our township staff
No,
actually.
it isn't.
Yes, it is, it was within the.
Listen, we're
dollar.
gonna move on.
$10,000.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. There's a presentation that we moved up on the agenda for our authority, who is with us tonight, regarding Maidencreek Township Authority and public financial management on debt issuance. So I guess if you folks would like to,
Sorry, Jamie, who wanted to do the presentation on their behalf, and then they'll speak to it a little bit as necessary, is
Yes.
writing on Zoom.
okay, you're there, Jamie?
What I have to do is turn the video off for us because the computer is not strong enough to do both at the same time. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'll give Jamie the ability to share his screen, and then he'll be able to get started here.
Oh, Hunter.
I hope that's a good one, because it's the technology, it's not me.
Can everyone hear me?
We got you.
I'm gonna turn the volume up just a little bit for you, Jamie, just give me 1 second. But you should be able to share your screen now as well.
All right. Here you go. Can everyone see the screen?
We got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for having me tonight. So again, my name is Gene Schlesinger. I work for a firm called PFM Financial Advisors. We serve as financial advisors to local governments, school districts throughout the Commonwealth. I spend a lot of my time in Berks County, working with a number of the local governments here. I'm representing the authority tonight to talk about an opportunity that they are considering related to some capital financings related to their long-term capital plan. The authority's been working through a plan over the last few years. Their most recent needs are related to some of the recent flooding, as well as some of the mitigation related to that, as well as a well project in Phillips Form. They have some other needs coming down in the future, but the consideration for tonight is the plan for a financing that would occur prior to the end of the year. As part of that, we want to talk about one way to make the transaction as beneficial to the township as well as the authority for its ratepayers by having the lowest overall interest expense available to them. Turn this page. Okay. Just very quickly, interest rates are a little higher than they've been in the last couple of years, but they are still in a very good place overall. We think back to the interest rate environment back in the early 80s, where rates were close to 20%. Over the last decade or so, they've been near historic lows. Rates have gone a decent amount over the last year or so on the short-term side of things. But overall, for issuers like you can borrow funds around 4% or less right now, which is still very, very strong. For tonight, as I mentioned, the authority has this capital plan. We are considering going forward with a financing of $5 million to cover a portion of that capital plan. The authority is currently in the process of trying to receive some grants to cover some of the capital needs. They don't have any response to those grant applications at this point, but the $5 million would cover a portion of these projects. Our goal is to complete the financing by the end of the year, and there's a number of steps associated with kind of going from start to finish to get us ready to get the funds for the authority into its projects. Our goal would be to have several public meetings related to the necessary process. Ultimately, that would include approvals and reviews of legal documentation that would be filed with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as well as approvals associated with both the authority and eventually the township. And I'll touch more on why we'd like the township to get involved in the next couple of minutes. The project itself, obviously, will be done relatively soon. They would be projects that would happen within the next 3 years. And more than likely, the debt issuance that we may consider would be no longer than 25 years, but it could be a little shorter depending on the decisions of the authority. One of the benefits of issuing debt through a township or an authority is the debt can be issued tax-free. That allows you as a municipality or authority to receive lower interest rates because the ultimate investor is getting a tax benefit based on the debt issuance itself. And that, of course, has lower interest rates over the course of time. I'll turn to the next page. So for tonight, again, we want to be transparent here. One of the ideas here to reduce the interest rate for the or bonds in this case would be to ask the township for what's called a guarantee. Well, the idea here would be that the debt issuance would be issued by the authority. All of the payments would be made by the revenues associated from the utility itself. So any revenues that come from water sewer rates would be covering the overall debt service. But having this additional security on the debt, i.e. general taxing power of the township, provides the investors with additional comfort and ultimately would provide overall lower interest expense because that additional security is associated with that. By doing this, because of that lower interest rates, we could save hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of time, and that's well worth the request for the township, because in the end, the residents are all one here, and that would provide the opportunity to have lower rates to cover the overall cost of this debt. This guarantee would happen should the township decide to move forward and allow for this. A future meeting that would be decided upon by the authority of the township, whether it be an ordinance that was created by the legal counsel. That ordinance would include what is called a guarantee agreement, and that guarantee agreement essentially just says that if there ever was a failure of payment or an event of default by the authority, which we're not anticipating, that they'd have that backstop in case that would happen. Overall, we expect that the authority would do the necessary things to cover overall payments over the course of time. They have long-term forecast as well as the opportunity to do what they can do to cover those things. So we don't expect any issue at all. This is very, very common for municipal authorities throughout the Commonwealth to ask for this type of thing. And again, because of this, we get this lower interest rate, which is again beneficial to the taxpayers as well as the ratepayers. By doing this, we would file any necessary documentations to the Commonwealth through something called the Local Government Unit Debt Act. Again, in this case, that's just a procedure that is associated with issuing debt. And the township, where the authority has really issued much debt over the last 20 plus years, so this would be to both these entities. We would be working with other professionals to work through this process to make this a successful and efficient transaction for everybody. I'll stop for a second to see if anyone on the board has any questions, and then I can just talk over about the balance of the presentation.
Do we have a copy of his presentation?
We do, yes. Would you
Get
like
us-
one?
Yeah, if you can get us one. There's a lot of verbiage there that you can't really,
They're not asking for a commitment tonight, they're asking for an acknowledgement, and are we willing to look into going into this agreement at this point?
Yes, there'll be time for future consideration. That meeting would probably happen, I'll go through the timeline in a second, probably in the next month or so. So there is some time to continue to think about it and discuss. But again, for tonight, I'd like to have at least a nod to say that this would be something that we will consider.
I understand we did this before.
That's correct.
And
That's correct.
probably back then, the rates were much, much higher than
Yes.
higher now.
That's most times when the authority borrows money, they will come and ask for this so that the rate is lower. And
Right.
it's basically, you're pledging your taxing authority to get that lower rate.
Correct.
I have no problem.
I'll briefly go through this. Again, none of these things are finalized at all. This is just some estimates of what we think things will look like. But should the authority borrow something like $5 million, again, it could be a 20 or 25-year amortization. Again, the overall interest rate would be probably somewhere in the 4% range, give or take, depending on what the interest rate environment is. And again, the difference between having that guarantee and not having a guarantee would make a difference overall. But again, from our perspective, we think it's a value use of that guarantee. Again, I'll just touch on this very briefly. You can see that this is just a generic timeline that we're hoping to accomplish. We're still working through all this, the authority and the township should we move forward. We'll have some steps that are associated with this. We need quarterbacking this process to help it through this, but ultimately we provide for the timeline to get us to a point where we would lock in interest rates probably sometime in the next couple of months, probably closer to early to mid-November is the estimate for the settlement before the end of the year. But the various steps associated with it will take place using both the resources of the administration on the township side as well as the authority as well as ourselves and some other folks. But we're used to this. We do this all over the state, throughout the country, and we feel very comfortable that we can meet this time to get the funds in place to do projects that are anticipated. That is all I have for tonight, unless anyone else has any other questions.
is that the conclusion of your part of the presentation?
That is, yes.
Do you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, like Josh said, we did this back in 2000.
Right.
We paid off the debt early. We anticipate that we'll probably do the same thing here. We've got grants coming in, so once we get everything, all the pieces together, then we'll know what that final amount is.
Right.
But this does enable us to get through about probably $10 million projects eventually.
But we do need to start it at this point because we've got some timelines that we're looking at.
Yes.
Some timelines for money that they've already expended, as well as timeline, and the flood definitely created a dilemma, so.
So really, for tonight, the big thing is if the answer is definitely gonna be no, you're not gonna back them, they need to know that. They don't need a yes tonight, they just
No,
need.
but I don't
if
see-
it's- No, I'm just, but that, from their perspective, they
Yeah.
need to know how to start processing. Are they doing it with you guys potentially saying yes, and then they get the lower rate? But if it's a definite no, then they know they gotta switch gears and go a different route. So,
I'm comfortable making a motion that we approve the staff to go forward with whatever paperwork needs to be done.
Yeah, you don't have to do that, you know?
it's more consensus. No.
I just have one question. What was the cost of the flooding to the damage that was caused to the
We had about 750. We're estimating the bills are coming in. We probably have 200,000 of invoices sitting over there. We are going to be doing some mitigations. We're going to be raising some of our equipment up, and we're also going, there's a dike down there that got completely flooded. It was completely level. The entire treatment plant had 2.5 feet of water, and we were completely inoperable till Sunday had happened. We got back 90% of the plant on Wednesday. By Thursday, we had everything up and running and in compliance again. So it was a major effort on my staff and the contractors. We had armies down there cleaning up.
At this point, I would
And
say.
it's really, the reason I said no is the staff has to do it is their staff, not your
Yeah.
staff, so.
But we have to, we just.
Yeah, you have to
We'll go
let
back.
them
We'll
know
look at that.
that we're-
There is participation that we do have to do early on, because if we're gonna back them, the creditors need to know that we're
Yes.
creditworthy
And
as
they'll come to
well.
us with, I think he said an order, I think it'd be orders or resolution,
Yes.
but there'll be something that you actually will
We're
adopt
gonna
at some
have
point.
Do we need to make a motion to
agreements
allow, and to
meeting.
prepare that?
No,
They're gonna-
they'll prepare it.
They're-
Okay.
Typically, that's how that.
I got it.
So the township at this point is saying, why don't you go forward?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the future meeting over the next month or so. And so if there's any questions between now and then, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay,
you.
All right,
thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
You guys have my,
Have a good evening.
they have my contact number.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm sure they did.
we'll connect if we get.
Answering your question, the total we're estimating is gonna be over flood damage over
The damage
700.
is 750, and then we have some mitigations. The
Okay.
dike we're gonna put, we're estimating that at $500,000. And the UV system, it got completely flooded, the circuit boards went, and we're replacing all the we're moving that up on the schedule. It was scheduled to be replaced, now we're doing that, that's another 350. So it's about 1.6 million for the damage and mitigation.
Should move all that expensive stuff to the second.
Everybody said, oh, that's what I thought you were.
My board has said that many, many times, yes.
And you have the second floor yet?
No. We had one room that was what you folks would call second floor, which is about 4 feet up. It came right to that level, and we had no damage in that room.
Everybody's going up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the Northern Berks Police Report. Chief, you are up.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have an actual report because our meeting is Monday. We haven't released the stats for July. A few things I wanted to talk about. We did have our National Night Out last week, and for everyone who's here who helped with that, I want to say thank you very much. It was an overwhelming success, and by overwhelming I mean I think it's officially grown beyond our capacity at this point. We've had, I think, conservatively speaking, we had 5,000 plus people there. The main walkway, you couldn't even walk there, so many people jammed in there, it was like Mardi Gras. So I'm very happy about that, but by the same token, some things that we're gonna have to look at doing potentially in the future, including maybe a different venue that's a little bit bigger. Because the school's been very gracious, but I think we've kind of outgrown and by taking on other departments and other areas, it was a really good success. It's a good thing, but it's kind of turned into a bigger monster than what we can do for the Maidencreek Regional Police Department. So some of the things that we want to talk about going forward. Also, I haven't mentioned this because we haven't had our meeting yet, but Detective Sergeant Wood and I were out at the car dealer today, looking at the cars that we purchased. There's a parking lot, probably about 300 vehicles on that parking lot, all Fords, destined to go to various police departments, fire departments, municipalities, all waiting to be upfitted. Our cars are there, we're just waiting for the upfitting. That means the lighting packages, the cages for prisoner transport, the push grills on the front, all that kind of stuff. And then the radios, of course, also, which we have the radio heads already, just have to have them installed. So they're saying potentially October now. But the vehicles are there. I did send some emails out, some photos. I actually touched them, and they're nice. So they're real. They can't, we wanted to be able to confirm that we do have vehicles. Because you have to remember, this has been over a year in the making. So, and with that in mind too, that's something that we'll have to talk about Monday. But we might want to anticipate looking forward to next time we need to order cars, since it's taking so long to get them. Sure, you've all seen in the news, Online Township's been extremely busy lately. Our guys have been doing a great job. It's a little overwhelming sometimes when you just if you get hit constantly. Last month it's been crazy. So, but their morale's up. They're doing a good job. So, but we don't have anything else.
And the time consumption on some of these calls is tremendous.
Oh, it's yeah.
So you've had, what, 2 homicides?
One attempted homicide with a suicide.
Yeah.
And then a homicide almost the exact same location as the initial shooting. And then the fatal crash on Tuesday night and Wednesday. It's just been back to back. It's been nuts.
We are in the process of looking at 2 more officers.
Yes, we're in the process of we had interviews, and we're furthering with some background checks, and hopefully we'll have 2 officers hired soon. And the promotions, we're going forward with those 2. Have a tentative date set for the promotions exam, so that should all be happening by year end, but really can't come soon enough. It's been crazy.
We appreciate the work you guys have done. Thank you, and not much we can say at this point. We can't control crime
exactly.
anymore. We can control water.
Exactly.
Weather,
So, yeah.
Exactly. So if you haven't seen cars out in your neighborhoods doing traffic, it's because we've been fighting some serious crime that's been happening.
Yeah.
It's just,
Takes precedence.
it has to.
While Chief's standing there, I do want to thank you for your input. If you guys have seen, we got the speed signs, solar speed signs. We got 2 of them from PennDOT actually. So there has been good things coming out of PennDOT.
2 exactly.
And Chief has been involved in helping us find strategic locations to place them. Whether it's along, I think right now we're focusing on 222, but we have to find out from the state where we are allowed to and can and can't put them. So
I'm guessing since PennDOT gave them
state
to
roads.
us, they need to be near the roundabouts, and that's the. I won't say for sure, but I'd check with PennDOT.
The intention with them is that they are mobile, and that they are ours, but they bought them with the excess funds they had from 222. So they're working on permits for us to place them there, because that was our initial request. But they verbalized and agreed to the concept that they were mobile and that they didn't need to stay there either.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think where we need them most is probably sure. We want the police department's input, and we had a conversation today about that. And if you guys see a need, we're able to move them. I know
Solar is good because the batteries for the signs that we have now, the charge doesn't last very long. So every 2 weeks or so, just to make sure they have enough power, we've been changing the batteries. But the batteries themselves are very expensive, and the batteries don't last very long. Yeah. So we're buying new battery packs every so many years, and it's very expensive, $600 to $800 for batteries. So the solar is great. The only thing the solar will do is it'll minimize the mobility of the signs.
Yeah.
So then you'll have a bigger erector set to move each time. But
So
That's perfect.
because of your comments, Keith and I talked a little bit today about trying to fully rig up one of these signs so that they're more mobile, that we'd be able to move them more easily with just a whole unit. So I think that he's gonna be able to put something really cool together that maybe we can send to PennDOT as one of their new recommended inventions.
I mean, I had a very Pennsylvania Dutch grandfather that passed away, but we used to use tires filled with cement and a pole in it for volleyball nets. They're pretty mobile.
Those are mobile for everybody.
That's the other thing I'd recommend, putting some sort of a device. Ours have a device, I won't say exactly what they are, but that if they're moved, we see where they're moved to
Okay.
and when they're moved.
Yeah.
Just because people like to be creative.
Chief, are there any possibilities of making yours more susceptible to utilizing the solar?
I don't believe so. We actually, Bob and I were down at a trade show down in Atlantic City, and we actually spoke with the company that made the signs. They were surprised that we still had those signs operating. They were very surprised, and when Bob showed them pictures on his phone of the signs and changing out the batteries, well, they were blown away. They said like we're the only people that they even heard of that are still using those signs. So I don't think that we'd be able to switch them over to solar at this point.
So what are people using that they're so surprised that these are working?
No, the newest
Solar?
versions, the newest versions of them, whether they're battery or solar. But
Oh,
these
just
are,
that
I don't know how old our signs are, and
Okay.
they've been around for a long time. But I think everyone else has moved on, and we've been using, luckily, using the same signs. They still work.
Okay.
They just draw power very quickly now.
Well, we were using the trailer and pulling it around, and that had car batteries in it.
But
So, and that still worked last I knew, so, but I'm sure something is going haywire, so.
yeah.
I did ask PennDOT for the invoice that they paid for these two, because they paid it all for us, so we didn't see what the invoice was. So I did ask them for the invoice to get an idea of what that would cost if we wanted to do it in the future. So we'll have that reference point if the township wanted to look at maybe buying another one at some point.
If we could buy them through PennDOT, because PennDOT probably gets a better
Better
rate from this
price,
company,
yeah.
because they probably buy them in bulk. They
Well,
probably-
okay, if they buy them in bulk, yeah.
I'm saying they probably buy
Yeah.
large quantities across the entire
They
state.
want more than just two, I
Yeah.
assure you.
So maybe reach back out to them and say, hey, these are great, but can we purchase additional units?
From that-
Yeah.
At your rate.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, anybody questions for the chief?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you
Yeah,
guys
thank
for.
No, but I enjoy your night out every time.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very,
It's just
very
become
nice.
it's become a much bigger thing, and that's a good thing, right? But it's a lot of work. A lot of work goes into 3 hours of. I mean, most people don't see that. They go, they get their ice cream, they watch the fireworks. It's great, walk around. But a lot of work goes into that, and it's more than just one or two people can really do.
We had 5 police departments, the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, the army. They flew a helicopter in, state police did a flyby. We had a lot of different agencies that
Park
participated.
rangers were there.
Park rangers.
Probation parole.
Yep, game,
Game commission.
yep,
It was neat. They had a big bear
Probation
shop there
parole.
that they tried. That was kinda cool.
yeah. So, we were the biggest in Berks County,
Yeah.
I'm almost positive.
Yeah, 69 News came at 3 o'clock, and I told them that I would advise it. 3 o'clock's too early, like, it doesn't really start filling up till 6. And they wound up staying pretty much the whole night, because they realized that.
Cold night out, where they think they're free.
Yeah,
Because, I don't know, because I think their idea was they were gonna go around to the various national night outs around the county.
Oh.
And I know they hit Reading, like, earlier in the day, and they did something with Reading, because I saw that in the news, but, yeah, they pretty much stayed at ours. So I think they left before the fireworks, but they stayed for most of it, so.
well, thank you,
All
sir.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They like the food better.
There you go. We were on a roll with hot dogs.
They ran out of hot dogs before the rolls.
Something else I just
Yeah, I
wanted to
know.
quickly add, I'd heard the comment through a friend about having more food options there, and that would be great. We would love to have another food truck there, but we need somebody to sponsor it, because everything's free there, you don't pay for anything. So we would need another person, because all the food trucks, all the food that's there is sponsored by someone. So that's something that the business would be interested in. That's something that we'd be
There was
glad
still
to.
plenty of food,
glad to-
there was a lot of options, I mean.
Yeah, I thought there were a lot of
I
options,
didn't
but that's
hear
one of the
any
feedback
complaints
items I had heard, was that there should be more options, and the lines are never long. Well,
The lines are always long.
right, so if there's more places, the lines would be shorter, but that involves
They didn't have the T-bone steaks, the baked potatoes, the shrimp.
the creme brulee.
Yeah, exactly. But everything else was good.
Other than that.
I'm a
I think it's what
vegetarian
you
and I
said.
didn't complain.
I guess that's a hit.
Thanks, chief. Okay. Engineer.
Thank you. You have a copy of the engineer's report. The agenda has the action items on it, the discussion items. I'm going to deviate from that and go to the second item to get the engineer out of here for the applicant. So 107, 109 West Western Road subdivision. This is a plan that's been before you before. This is a two-lot subdivision for the townhouses that were built, and they're just creating two lots for each of the duplexes. Planning Commission took action at their Planning Commission meeting to make a recommendation to the board to approve it. You have a review letter in the package, item number 3, July 24th. They did get a zoning variance, so all the zoning issues have been resolved. The plan itself, there were no items on the plan itself to be addressed. There are 3 subdivision or 3 waiver requests, and I'll let the applicant engineer walk you through those 3 waiver requests.
Good evening, Rob Hayne, Park Surveying and Engineering. As Tom said, we prepared with the Planning Commission, and they provided a recommendation for approval of the 3 waiver requests we have before you tonight, as well as conditional plan approval. They only offered, before getting the waivers, the Planning Commission asked for some additional points to be set on the dividing line between the 2 lots. We had our crew out on Monday and set the additional points on that line, so all that work has been taken care of. Once we receive conditional approval, assuming things go well tonight, we'll still be waiting on the official written decision from the zoning hearing board, so we can finalize that notation on the plan, and then we'll be ready to proceed. The waiver requests are pretty straightforward. We're asking for a request for relief from curbs and sidewalks. This section of West Western Road, there's no curb and sidewalk there now, so we're asking for relief from that. The next section is also for sidewalks. And the last section that we're asking for relief from is for monuments. The existing perimeter markers were found during the course of our survey for this. The 2 in the back were placed, they were missing, but there's no new markers that need to be set, so there was no concrete monuments that were to be placed on this subdivision.
So what is the relief that you require? If everything is there,
Technically, the ordinance requires that monuments be placed.
why would you never do that? Take out something existing and put a monument in. Right. And on the sidewalk, it would not be a straight out waiver, it would be deferred. A note would be placed on the plan stating that the applicant agrees to install the sidewalk if requested by the township in the future. But, so it is a waiver, but it's kind of deferred.
It's an allowance.
It's an allowance, so whatever term you want to use, yeah. So I don't know if that note is on the plan yet, Rob, but that note should be placed on the plan.
It is not, but we will place that note on the plan.
The other items are all administrative items: certificate of ownership, signed, notarized, certificate of accuracy, signed, and basically it's just administrative things, signatures required.
I'm just curious, just a brief, not in depth story on it.
Yep.
People are living there already.
Oh, yeah.
two families.
Yes.
How's that work?
Well, it was allowed. You can have the duplex on a single lot, and it was allowed and permitted.
So it's considered one mailing address right now, though, right?
I don't know
No,
that.
you have 2 units.
There's two units.
units.
2
That's
units,
what's
so they're
allowed.
separate mailing.
But it's one property.
Yeah, but if,
Well,
well,
it
you
could-
got
it could
number
be-
1,
it
number
could be
2, A,
condo.
B, or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
like,
so,
yeah.
so a home, one person could own it and.
You have 2 units.
And have 2 units, or you could have
Sure.
2 people, and be basically a condo association. They didn't want that, they wanted to have fee
Right.
simple,
Something,
Right.
okay?
which makes sense.
I just didn't know, it was like a temporary agreement until this was passed
There
through?
was no agreement, I mean, if the zoning would've got, I mean, if it would've been denied, then.
I was just curious how it
No, there was no.
kind of put the cart before the horse.
Yes.
So we need to vote on the variant
Yeah.
waivers?
Separate motion on the waivers, and then a separate motion, on the, approval of the plan contingent upon, compliance with the system design engineers, July 24th, 2023 letter, and the addition of the note on the plan.
So what's the correct wording on the waiver? You said with the deferral for the sidewalk
We've just been using the term waiver.
waiver?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it would be approval of the 3 waivers as requested with the condition that the deferral of sidewalks be properly noted on the plan.
Okay, 7?
I'll second it.
All in agreement?
Aye.
And then we need the approval of the plan.
Conditioned on
Conditioned
the
on-
compliance with the
right.
7/24/23 SDE letter.
And before we go, so property markers were put in, pins were put in,
They have it done.
they're done, everything's good. Okay.
Have a motion? We have a motion?
We had our solicitors just say that.
See, I can't make a motion, but.
No, 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 but we
What he
were
said.
recommending, I was gonna say as,
Yeah, as
so
I
moved,
stated,
and then,
there you
yes,
go.
stated, and then,
Yep.
do you wanna repeat that, and I can?
So it's a approval, it's final,
Yes.
final approval of the plans conditional on compliance with the July 24th, 2023 SDE letter.
Okay, 7.
I'll second.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. See, that was easy.
Thank you very much.
You said it the first time.
I did, that's all right.
Right, but then
We
there
got
was the
jumbled up a
discussion,
little.
so we can't, you know.
Okay.
But he worded it.
All right.
Yeah, the way the waiver with deferral.
Yeah,
That was the first
I did it so that the note, the condition of doing the note would correct that issue. Yeah, they kind of tied it all together.
I'm not worried about it, he'll make sure it's
Took care of it.
That's what we
So it
had
became a
you.
concrete
Exactly.
That's
construction.
why I figured I'd
Detail it.
phrase it there, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's more concrete.
So,
We'll be later.
So that was one similar.
all right, the engineer, you've got more.
Yes, I do. Under the next, first item then for discussion is your stormwater ordinance that you have from the last meeting, and you have in the packet a brief memo from Ty. And the planning commission made a recommendation, and I'll let Ty walk you through that memo and answer any questions that you have on that ordinance. It's a long ordinance, it's pretty much,
Is it under the updates, like this?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. It's this one.
The purpose of this ordinance is to meet DEP's requirements for the MS4 program that the township is currently doing. The last one that DEP put out was back in 2008. This ordinance addresses other concerns or
hold on one second, Ty. Does anyone want a copy of that memo? We have extra copies of it, if that's easier.
I'll take it.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, just trying to find it. There.
Or unless, assign to me one or anything.
I have it on the.
Josh, did you find
I
it?
got it,
You found
yeah.
it,
It's
okay.
7.
It's item 7. But if you want it,
Oh,
Dave,
it's
it's
just-
not right here.
Well, not completely, towards the back.
Okay.
It was printed front and back, so that was probably why it was hard to find.
Duly noted.
I'm sorry, it's the tree hugger in me.
So what?
I said tree hugger, but I don't know if that's a PC term.
We've heard that before.
The beginning of the ordinance is the first three paragraphs from DEP's model ordinance that they've asked all municipalities to adopt. Since we are part of the MS4 program, we do annual reports, and we are required to update our ordinances to comply with DEP's recommendations. Their ordinance is a recommendation to the municipalities. You do have the choice to accept or reject anything that's in their ordinance. What our office did is we went through and added items that was missing from your current ordinance, and in there, if you had a copy of our stormwater ordinance draft, everything that's in red is what was changed. In this memo is a summary of what was changed. It doesn't identify every single item because it gets into definitions and basis of storage and things like that. The first section of the model ordinance has to do with definitions. Green infrastructure and low impact development was not included in the ordinance, so those definitions were added. This follows DEP's best management practice manual, and they are recommending that municipalities include that as part of the stormwater ordinances. Under general requirements, section A, H3 was not included, so this statement has been added to the ordinance. Section 182.22 is volume control. That was not part of the ordinance as well, so we've included that section in the revised or the draft ordinance. Riparian buffers was not mentioned in the stormwater ordinance. It has to do with stream protection and providing a buffer along your streams so that it keeps your vegetation in the stream areas.
I just have one question. You said section 182 dash what?
24.
Because that's not in here. Is it?
Yeah,
182.17?
For the riparian
Goes
buffer.
to 18?
Yeah, it's at the top of
Go back.
the red line, of this one here.
Page 2.
Okay, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well then it's out of
Number
order.
7.
It's out of order, but okay.
But did I give it to you out of order?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I just, and while we're talking, I just one other comment. It says that you're gonna be designed for 100-year storm event, but I thought they're not using 100-year storms.
They still use
They
that
still
term,
do?
they still use that terminology, yes, 100-year storm. But
As opposed to the 1% storm or the whatever. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Under section 182-25, plan content, this was included as part of the ordinance. If there's anything that when I'm going through this, that you have any questions on, just stop me, because I have a tendency to kind of rush through it because people's eyes start glazing over when they talk about stormwater. So if there's something in here that you see that you want to discuss, just let me know. We also added some updates to amend the ordinance based on items that we were looking at as missing from the ordinances. One of the things that the Planning Commission had mentioned was for impervious surfaces. The current ordinance is silent on pools and ponds. The Planning Commission feels that pools and ponds should be considered as impervious. But I will let you know that if you include pools, you'll get a lot of pushback from the residents. Every time somebody comes in with a stormwater permit, it does have to go through planning. They'll have to do a best management practice control for those pools.
And there would be any size pool.
Any size pool.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine people like that.
And most pools have freeboard in them. So if you get a rain event, you're not really getting runoff because you have freeboard
Right.
in that pond or in that pool.
Well, the pond is especially too, and then,
And
and in
ponds,
ponds,
too.
you have some infiltration.
Well, there's no infiltration, but it's not considered an impervious area
Well-
in the design.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Ty, could you just give a brief example of a BMP for a pool, if that was gonna be required?
just like any other structure, if you have an impervious area, you have to calculate the surface area and determine how much water you have to put back into the ground. We have a formula in the ordinance that stipulates half an inch of runoff times your square footage divided by 12 tells you how much water you have to put back into the ground. Currently, SDE, when we review permits, we make a engineering decision on pools. And if it's just an above-ground pool or an in-ground pool with limited amount of paving around it, we look at that as an exemption. If somebody comes in with 1,000 feet of concrete with a pool building or something like that, then yes, we do require the BOPs. But if you add this definition, then that's going to affect our individual permits.
And to answer Hunter, a BMP, typical BMP for something that would be a dry well, you know, a pit filled with stone that you put the water into, a rain garden. You know, those would be your typical BMPs for this type of.
But it's not required.
But we're saying don't require it.
Currently, it's
The
not.
planning commission recommended to consider it.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that.
But it's not in the language you have here.
No, it's not. What you see in red under impervious surfaces, we are adding this information. We're calling patios, garages, storage sheds, and similar structures. And we are not counting decks as impervious area if they do not prevent infiltration. In other words, if you put a wood deck up and you have slots in it, it goes down to ground or stone, then we're saying that that would not be considered an impervious surface. If you had a concrete floor underneath it, then the concrete floor would have to be considered as impervious. So. On the next page, there's design criteria for stormwater management conveyance BMPs that was added. We're looking to make some modifications to the basins and impoundment areas. We're looking to have the emergency spillway and basin design be updated to ensure that basin will retain and control storms up to and including the 100-year storm event. And the items that we're looking at is the outlet structure. Right now, your outlet structure can be set at any elevation. You can be set for the 25-year storm, you can set it for the 50-year storm, you can set at the 10-year storm. As long as the 100-year storm is rate is controlled. What we are recommending is that outlet structure to be set at the 100-year ponding elevation for the storm, so that if we get some larger storms that come in, then that gives the opportunity for that outlet structure to use to be able to pass other flows through the basin without it overtopping the berm or going through the spillway. And it also helps eliminate sediment or debris from settling on top of the outlet structure, because as the water recedes, that debris will set. We're looking to also increase the freeboard between the 100-year ponding elevation that's routed through the basin to the bottom of the spillway at 1 foot. The Planning Commission made a recommendation that that be changed to 18 inches. All that means is that you have 1.5 feet of area that hopefully never gets used, but it also gives you the opportunity to have more water that stays in your basin and not, and goes out through your outfall pipe and not through your spillway.
Right now, it's at a foot.
Yes.
No, right now, you don't have a requirement.
Yeah.
We are recommending a foot. Planning Commission came back and asked for 18 inches. Because right now, we have a plan that we're reviewing right now. They have their 100-year ponding elevation 2 inches from the bottom of that spillway. And we met with them earlier this week, and we told them that wasn't acceptable. So they're following our recommendation, but if we have it in the ordinance, then we don't have to have that,
Right.
those discussions. So,
We don't have to twist our arm as hard.
Hold the waivers over there.
so are you in favor of the 1 foot or the 18 inches of freeboard?
Can you give the cons and pros to the distance difference?
The cons is gonna complain about having 18 inches.
Well, the more freeboard you have inside the basin, the deeper your basin's gonna be. Because your berm, let's just say you have a foot of water going through your spillway, and then you have a foot of freeboard, which is in the ordinance from where your flow through the spillway is to the top of berm. So that you already have 2 feet there. And you can have that berm up to 15 feet before it becomes a DEP dam requirement. The next item that I have on the list is I'm looking to change the depth to a maximum of 6 feet for the 100-year ponding. That will make have the basin
Bigger.
broader,
Grow the square foot.
flatter,
Bigger footprint.
and it gives you a better way for that basin to infiltrate. Because right now, if you have a small area, water goes down, but if you have a large area, then you get better infiltration. So if we go with 6 feet of ponding plus the 18 inches, that gives you 7.5 feet from the spillway to the bottom of the basin. And then if you have 1 foot of flow through the spillway and 1 foot of freeboard, you're talking about 9.5 feet for your basin. That would be the maximum depth. So
So you're not holding the maximum depth at 6 feet.
I'm holding the maximum 100-year ponding elevation at 6 feet. So someone can't come in and give us a 10-foot deep
Correct.
pond and then give us the freeboard.
But if you held it at the, I got what you're saying, but I was gonna say, if you held it at the 6 feet, your pond isn't that much bigger to accommodate the
Right.
old water.
But to meet the NPDES requirements, most engineers are using the basin as an infiltration basin. So now, there's loading ratios that they're supposed to follow, but a lot of the engineers will get their plan approved through the Conservation District prior to us reviewing the plan, and then it becomes a major modification because we come back and tell them that it's too small. So,
So when we'd be better at the 18 inches anyway. 18 inches would give us a little bit more.
It's a little bit of safety
Yes.
factor.
yes, yes.
So that could be the 500-year flood?
No, I won't even be close to that, I don't think.
It gives you more buffer, gives you
Yeah.
more safety factor.
Well, I think at this day and age, you probably want to have more safety
Yeah.
factor
Yeah.
built in.
I mean, look what we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need to deal with that. So I
Yeah.
think 18 inches
I would
is
support
where I'd
18.
be.
I'm good with it. That's the pond, I know you might get to it, but is there anything changing with the outfall structures in this at all?
Yes,
Okay.
by forcing them to set the outlet structure at the 100-year ponding elevation, that requires the engineer to do what we had to do 20 years ago and actually design that outlet structure and put in orifices on the side, weirs on the side, or whatever. So I'm asking them to just think about their design, make it work, instead of just trying to
Throw a prefab in there.
right, get something through there. Now, we do have a rate release requirement, that's part of DEP's requirement, and we do have a map in the ordinance now, which is like this, and now you don't have a picture of it. But on the side, depending on what district you're in, it tells you what you have to do for your rate release. Most of them have the 2 down to the 1.
2-year storm down to the 1-year storm.
Yeah, and there are some areas where you have to take the 50-year down to the 25-year for rate release. So, and that's a DEP requirement. It's already in your ordinances. We're not looking to make any changes to that. We're fine with that. In fact, that this is the Act 167 Stormwater Management Plan that the township uses. We're not looking to change that. Most basins use infiltration basins. So what I'm asking for, because after 2-3 years, the basin could fail. I'm asking for a under drain pipe be put in, short distance from the outlet structure. I'm not looking for the whole area to be under drain, but if we have something in the ordinance that requires a way to drain that basin if it fails, because they're gonna have to go in there and they're gonna have to rototill the basin floor and then reseed it and hopefully get infiltration back into the system. I'm also giving them the option to use the release concept design, which is a pipe that comes up, turns at 90, and then goes into your outlet structure. And so as water is forced through there, it controls the rate as well.
Your under drain, is there a requirement for that? Did you come up with a requirement for that? Like 2/3 of the pond bottom should be pipe? What is your concept on that?
I was looking at the first 15 feet, but if you want the first third, then I can add that to the order.
I think based on the size of the pond, it should be based, that, yes, like 1/3 of, you know, if you have a 100-foot long pond and you're only going in 15 feet, it might be fine. But if you have a 600-foot long pond and you're only going in 15 feet, then your potential for laying is greater. I mean, it should be sloped anyway.
Maybe a combination of the two, 1/3 being minimum of 15 feet. That way, that's even smaller.
1/3, not less than 15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Infiltration basins are flat. They do
Right.
not have a
Right.
slope on them.
Right.
So,
But there's still potential for sediment buildup?
well, you have that, yes.
Yeah, so you end up blocking anyways, becomes an issue.
I think we should even provide, or will we provide a standard detail for the under drain?
We can come up with one if that's what you like.
I think we should provide it. I think we should put that in there, because who knows what we're gonna get.
And the one that the board is going with is 1/3, not less than 15 feet. Okay.
The final drain out, is there a way to, like if necessary, the need comes back, that you might have to reverse flow and hook a fire hose to it? blow it clean possibly to open it up?
No, because
Underground.
that's underground.
Man,
So, I mean, if you hook the hose to, it's not gonna go anywhere because it'll be clogged.
So it's
And
gonna be-
you know, another option would be to put the under drain in and put a valve on that pipe as well.
But then the valve could be jammed
That's
too.
just, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
that's
there was
true.
definitely a maintenance issue there.
So,
Yeah.
if this is a pushback from the conservation district, then our recommendation would be to put the under drain in, put the valve in, and they just have to exercise it on an annual basis,
Right,
so.
well, that would work too.
But then again,
Where you see
our
the-
basins are all owned by property owners.
Right.
Who's gonna go out there and actually,
They don't.
Inspect it.
and then if they do open them up, they're not gonna close them. So I just prefer to have the, relief trench as opposed to trying to manually do it.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That's just more room for errors.
Under stormwater collection conveyance system, your current ordinance requires that anything off-site, when it comes through your site, the 100-year storm is supposed to be conveyed to your basin. And that includes swales and as well. Right now, your storm pipes for on-site projects are 25-year storm. But there should be, if you design your system for a 25-year storm, when you get to a low point, from that point on, either the pipes have to be changed to a 100-year storm, or they need to provide positive flow from that low point into the basin. So that the basins are designed for a 100-year storm, the water has to get there, so.
So what drives them, what drives a developer that direction though? For like cost savings? So if the developer goes in there and we say, well, you gotta design your system for a 100-year storm, which should be anyway, but let's say it requires them to put a 48-inch diameter pipe in there, and they said, well, we can throw a swale in there for a lot cheaper, and they go that route.
Well,
What defines that criteria?
what defines the criteria is there positive flow from that low point to your stormwater base, directly to your stormwater base?
Which they may have, but
So,
what concerns me is that we open that up for what we have going on in Melrose.
but if you have, let's say that on top of the hill, you have a swell in, and it gets into an inlet. That inlet from there to the basin will need to be designed for a 100-year storm.
Correct.
So,
Correct, but I'm saying, what's stopping them from taking the swale directly into the basin?
it's gonna be SDE's responsibility to make sure that they do meet all of the requirements for that distribution.
I mean, they have to be able to design it. I don't know how they design, I mean, street, I mean,
Well,
I don't know how they would do that. In some cases, they can do that, but I don't think that that's gonna be,
I just see it being a cost savings for a developer, and if we don't put provisions in there for.
well,
I've done it in my industry too, where we had locations that we've run a swale right into the pond because
Right.
it's just worked better.
there's nothing wrong with that.
There's not.
If they want to have that as their
There's not.
design.
My concern is that.
And they can do that now.
And the swales are designed to accommodate the 100-year storms, you're saying?
I'm sorry.
Swales are designed for what storm?
If
Depends
it's,
what they're- again, it depends what
depends
they're-
on what it is. If
Okay.
it's taking off-site, it has to be designed for 100-year.
Right.
If it's only drainage for yards, then it's 25-year.
But we also put freeboard on the swales also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so there is a 6 inch and a freeboard requirement.
So now we're having freeboard.
Okay, well, that
swales
makes me
too.
feel better than too, okay, all right.
And that does follow the conservation
Sure.
district requirements.
Okay, very good.
Um,
Can't leave these pieces up.
Um, There are several items in here that has to do with the technical construction of the basin, the keyway trenches, anti-seep collars, and things like that. So this is information that we're making sure that's in the ordinance.
So there was no requirement for anti-seep collars before?
Yes, there was,
Okay.
but I'm requiring them to put one of them in the core trench,
Sure, right.
so that one of them is in that clay trench.
Yep.
Before it wasn't.
Gotcha.
They can go in with one,
Mhm.
so. Under your collection system, your current ordinance requires any stormwater pipes, culverts, and bridges to be designed to handle the 50-year storm. I'm changing that to be 100 years,
I'm good with that.
so. The rest of it's just kind of wording in there. I'm also adding the requirements for cover over pipes and roads and pipes and trenches. Right now, the ordinance does not address minimum cover. So what I'm trying to do is prevent the pipes from being in the base of the paving. So I'm requiring a minimum of 24 inches in roads, so that I can get my base course in and have some cover on that.
24 inches to the top of the road or 24 inches to the sub-base?
No, that's 24 inches from the top of the road to the top of the pipe. And then, so that gets you out of your paving
Sure, right.
specs. One of the things that I run across is the designer wants to do volume control using the rational method. The rational method is a rate control and was used by PennDOT for many years. PennDOT does not look at the rational method when they're designing stormwater basins anymore. We're looking for the soil cover complex method because it's based on volume.
Yeah, we're getting too technical.
No, yes, I appreciate it.
So,
But we're just, what we're saying is we're being more conservative.
Yes.
and not only that, but I'm also trying to keep designers from coming in, sizing the basin for the 2-year storm for volume, and then turning that back around and routing all the storms through that basin. What's happening is that there's no discharge coming out of your basin. I had reviewed one project where it was designed that way, and when they routed the basin through the 100-year storm, the 100-year storm was not leaving the basin. That did not represent what the site was actually doing. So what I'm trying to avoid is this conflict or confusion of what the rational method is for and what the soil complex method is for. So that's a restriction that I'm putting in the ordinance, that it has to be approved by the township engineer prior to doing the plan. The last thing that was with the memo looks like this. This is NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall data. Your projects are based on your coordinates of your site. You put those coordinates in, and it gives you your rainfall data for the storms. We normally look at the 2 through the 100-year storms, and for 24 hours, and these numbers are what NOAA has calculated for storms that go through the areas. So one side of the township may have this requirement, another side of the township, it could be more stringent or less.
Would there really be that much difference in one township?
You can have that difference,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And NOAA actually updates their rainfall data regularly. So by having this in as a requirement for your basin design, you're using the most recent data available. In the past, what the townships would do is they would say, okay, for a 2-year storm, it's going to be 3.2. For a 100-year storm, it's going to be 8.2. So now, what this does is that it gives you the opportunity to take a look at what your current rainfall data is in that region, and then the basin is designed based on that.
So then, because we're having all these storms these last several years, you're saying this table's actually changed, or
Yes.
will change for our township?
Yes.
Potentially.
So if we're looking at this, just correct me if I'm wrong, but at 10 inches, over a 10-hour, 12-hour period, we were at the 1,000-year mark?
We're over.
Yeah. So,
That's what I gave you at the last meeting.
Right.
Yeah, same.
But we were in the
Yeah.
6-hour time period, we weren't in the 24.
right, no.
It's
So-
even more accelerated than that.
We'd have
I won't be around
been,
for
what,
the next one.
2,000 or
It
3,000?
could have been 3,000 year storm in 6
Yeah.
hours, 7.5 inches.
This,
Crazy.
this chart goes, includes the 200, 500, and 1,000. Normally, you don't use those higher numbers unless you're doing a floodway analysis and a HEC 2 analysis for a region, for dams, things like that. DEP recognizes the 2 through the 100. We do have in our ordinance that the 2-year post has to be reduced to the 1-year pre. That's to meet the stream bank erosion. So everything that you see between the 1-year and the 100-year, that would be in every stormwater ordinance or plan that comes through. Our office will review it and make sure that they do meet those requirements. That's a summary of the ordinance. If you have any questions, anything that you would like to have added or changed, just let me know. What we're looking for tonight is a recommendation to make these modifications and to advertise this ordinance so that we can adopt it at the next meeting. We have until September 16 to complete the MS4 annual report, and this ordinance will need to be part of that.
And you're gonna make those changes that we
Yes.
agreed upon tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. You need a motion for that, I can imagine.
Yeah, they'll authorize this solicitor to
Spending money.
All right. So I have a motion to authorize the solicitor and the engineer to move forward with this ordinance.
I'll make that motion.
Make the adjustments as necessary, as discussed this evening.
Yeah, I make the motion, we move forward with it with the changes as discussed.
All right, I'll second.
All in agreement?
Aye.
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 That's one step, folks. How do you address a 1,000-year storm? How do you do that?
You don't, you're going, there's, what that would cost people in general.
Here's how you address it. Feet don't fail me now, you run away. Get away from
But you have infrastructure that was designed for much less water, so that's the problem.
When Fukushima happened, then they changed a lot of stuff from Fukushima in the nuclear world, which a lot of that's trickled down, and it's just stuff that doesn't get designed. It's money.
Well, we're moving forward with it, so we've got to address much more aggressively, I guess.
So if I can jump in for the next item, for the bridge, Cornerstone Bridge damage and discussion of response. If you want to make that exclusive to just Cornerstone, then you would want to start with Tom. If you want to start wider scale for the problem as a whole, the staff has a presentation that kind of summarizes the damage that just happened from this last storm. I just didn't want to go in an order that doesn't make sense to you guys. So if you just want to focus on Cornerstone, Tom can start with that, but we do have that.
Basically, we discussed everything that I was gonna discuss about
Okay.
Cornerstone, so.
Earlier.
Earlier,
Yeah.
and so
Okay.
as far as the information, you know, you have the information as far as the inspection report, what was recommended for immediate improvements versus consideration of removal of the structure.
How far did that settle? Did we actually do a measurement on that?
No. Visually, we can see, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
so
So for
The
now.
bridge itself.
a little bit, yes.
Okay.
There's some movement, there is some
You can see
movement there, yeah, you can see some movement there.
So the potential exists with another storm like that, we're gonna have some major movement again, correct?
Any future storm, any future events that are that magnitude will definitely continue to have an impact on the structure, yes.
Okay.
So, for me seeing it, and I'm not a bridge inspector or anything like that, but being out there during the flood, water is going around the bridge. Under the bridge, around the bridge.
Over the bridge.
It went over every.
It went over my pool and
Yeah.
over the diving board.
So yeah, I have thoughts on it, and I don't know if we're at that point yet in this meeting, but,
My suggestion would be let us do the presentation
fine.
that summarizes the damage, and then you guys can talk about responses from a holistic standpoint.
take it away, Hunter.
Actually, Connor Tucci, who's the township clerk for the summer, his last day is tomorrow. He actually prepared all of the damage assessment based on all of the calls back that we got from residents. So he's actually gonna do the presentation, and then we have additional information that Dave was alluding to with our total damage assessment that we gave to the county. And then this will be for the board to discuss, some of your priorities. But let me go ahead and.
Should I stand up now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanna make sure. Got that little thingy.
Come on, computer. There.
If he could stand somewhere else so we could see.
Yeah,
Oh,
you-
yeah. Where
that
should I go?
podium is mostly.
Oh, well, I don't really need the podium, but I mean.
Okay. Is your view still okay, Eric? Okay.
There we go.
And then you should be able to just click it.
Okay, yeah.
And then if not, just let me know and I'll start clicking.
Alright, yeah, okay. So, and you put a second picture of this thing,
Yes,
so I can
yep,
click
that's
past
the
this?
next
Okay, so, yeah, looking at, obviously, the damage report from July 9th. Oh, shoot, I already screwed up. Alright, so.
Everybody in the backseat.
So, yeah, this map here is effectively a Google map that I put together, which has all the recorded calls and people that came in recording property damage. There's 161 properties there, they're all listed, and it's color-coded in regards to general damage degree. So the green being like yard damage and such, then going to yellow being up to a foot of water, red being 1 to 5, and then anything past that is purple, I believe. So you can kind of get a general idea, but we'll get more into specifics here. The other thing that I also was looking at was FEMA maps that are showing the floodplain and examining kind of what we're supposed to be expecting from our floodplain in general. Primarily looking at the lighter blue sections, which is the 1% chance of flooding in any given year. So there's always, that's most likely. Then there's the blue and red stripe, which you'll see in the maps, which is the regulatory flood way, and then the orange, which is the 0.2% annual chance of flooding, which those ones we will see a little bit of, but there's not a whole lot of actual, those don't get much flooding, and that was shown in the report as well. So starting off here, we just kind of have an overlook of the township as a whole and watching where the water runoff is mostly coming from. So you have kind of near the bottom there, in the bottom right, water runoff is coming down from the mountain there, and then also the main stream going down towards the Schuylkill River from the screen right to left, which is sort of backwards, but you know. So, and then we'll be looking at a couple areas here where there was a specific large amount of damage that kind of highlighting for the sake of this, but generally there's quite a lot of damage to be analyzed as well and can be found in the Google map. So, starting off with the community park, it was largely submerged. The creek running alongside it was overwhelmed. It's not a regulatory floodway there. It's just supposed to run towards the regulatory floodway. It's largely due to water runoff from the mountain, and this stream continued to go down into Southview Road, which was one of the highest listed damaged areas in our township. Closer look at that here shows that 11 houses along Southview Road reported damage, 9 of which experienced water levels exceeding a foot in their basements to a maximum of 10 to 15 feet of water. This water from the mountain is generally unable to collect or absorb into the soil, so if the storms, as we've kind of seen, continue to keep getting like rough and such like that, we can definitely see similar conditions happening as we don't have that water just continues to pile down because of buildings and such along the mountain where the water just isn't able to absorb. So then we move along over to Bland Meadows Parkway. This was another spot where you were a lot of damaged properties. We had effectively another runoff from the mountain that goes through this kind of area of foliage and then down into the regulated floodway. Looking closer, you can see that there were 20 houses along the creek directly that endured damage to yards and minor flooding. If we are able to maintain that wooded area there and also in the other spots, and like how Keith was doing on Mondays, we were talking about with clearing up some of the trees and such that have fallen and branches that are blocking all this area just because all the foliage above the creek, that could definitely help to try and keep that water moving. But these sort of areas lead to just generally so much damage across right next to it because it all swells up right in the back of those houses. So then this all kind of culminates into this area between like Route 73 and Schaefer Road, that large stretch where we have like Spirit, we have Faith, and we have Cornerstone. And specifically looking at these spots, it's overwhelming and you have a little bit of that 0.2% floodway, but largely it's the 1% chance of flooding, and those areas can quickly become overwhelmed, and the regulatory floodway running through it is just unable to like keep up with that and keep it going, especially as those other branch offs from the mountain aren't properly flowing into it and just causing more damage ultimately. So if we look here more closely at Cornerstone Drive and Faith Drive, this was, in terms of number, the highest and most damaged, but in regards to in comparison, Southview Road had the most damage, Bland Meadows Parkway had the most houses that were hit. This kind of is the nice medium Goldilocks right here, where we have 17 properties experienced more than a foot of water, 2 of which had over 5 feet of water, and then 10 more properties had up to 1 foot of water in their basements from rising water and also sewer backup that was running through. So looking back kind of in the big picture, you can just kind of get a general idea of the fact of the matter of where the water is coming from, areas that we can kind of pinpoint to focus on, at least for starters, and try to get some ideas here on how we want to get the water absorbed so that it won't just flow into all these local areas and cause less damage in general. So, anything you'd like to add? I kind of talked fast, so I apologize for that.
Tom, is there anything you want to add from an engineering perspective?
I think you did a real good job. Very, very nice.
Very nice.
In fact, if you can give me a copy of the PowerPoint, I'll like to keep it. But no, I think that the areas are documented. These are the areas that we're going for emergency permits, other than we're not doing the emergency permit on the Willow Creek itself between Cornerstone and Faith, is it? Or yeah. But the other ones there that are coming down the mountain are all areas that we are getting emergency permits for.
How's that process moving?
Should be done this week. The emergency permit should be applied for this week.
Okay. What is the damage that we have accrued for the whole township at this point?
So our estimate that was handed over to the county is in the $7 million range. I haven't checked with Chris Klein to see what the most recent number, when he's been doing some of these other inspections. Like we had one that was for a commercial property on June Avenue that came in later. So how that's adjusted it, I'm not exactly sure, but that $7 million number includes the township's anticipated damages, the municipal authority's anticipated damages, as well as residences that Chris has been able to estimate to this point. Residences or businesses.
And how have we made out with FEMA, and all the alphabet soups that don't seem to be rushing?
So, what has been communicated to us is that it is in the process of being reviewed by the federal government for a disaster declaration.
Did you speak to all homeowners to get damages? Because when I called in, I kept calling in to give updates, and I was actually told, why are you calling in?
Yeah.
Why are you giving updates? Well, because I had more costs.
Yeah, I'm not sure who you spoke to that would have said that, but updates along those lines would not have been necessary for us to have, because Chris Klein, who's the emergency management coordinator, was going out to properties in order to do the damage assessments.
But they didn't assess what we lost in the house and things like that.
Well, I don't think that FEMA would go
Cares.
into that area.
Okay, well,
Well,
I was just
I don't know
wondering
if it's
because
that
you
they
said,
don't
you know,
care.
about these damages, but I was told
Okay.
not to call in.
Hunter, what was the magic number you told me we had to reach here
So
in Maidencreek?
for Maidencreek, do you know off the top of your
I'm
head?
sorry,
Dave?
no,
It's,
I caught you.
the countywide number is about $34 million.
Okay,
And I think they've superseded that.
I believe that they have. I believe that they have, which I think is why it's waiting for the federal government's designation.
Antietam was 22 million.
Yeah,
So,
it's exceeded FEMA, right?
The process
Yeah.
works that it goes through local first, and then it goes to county, then it goes to state, and then it goes to federal. So in order for it to go to state, it's gotta cross county lines. This storm crossed county lines. In order for it to go to FEMA, it had to cross state lines, and it did do that. So, and I've gotta say, they move very slowly. This is the slowest I've seen FEMA actually moving from different storms that I personally worked with them on. So I can tell you that I've seen them be out on scene, and I did those assessments. Driving by, and then I had to go do the personal assessments, get all that into the county. Then we met with the state and federal at the county office. That hasn't happened yet. So I'm not sure why. Maybe things are more mired in red tape at this point. I have no idea.
I did see on the news that Congresswoman Houlihan, who is not our Congresswoman, or our member of Congress, I should say, was advocating to President Biden to authorize that emergency declaration for Berks County. And I think, Tom, you were alluding to that declaration having been permitted for Bucks County. And I suspect that Northampton County is probably on that list as well.
Right.
Has anybody contacted our Congresswoman Madeline Dean?
So I shared it with their municipal services rep. His name is escaping me, if you remember, we talked about him briefly, not about this, but I shared what was going on with him.
Okay.
Yep.
I know, excuse me, I know it doesn't happen overnight, but, I mean, right now, I'm at $70,000 and I'm not even in my house yet. You know what I mean? And that doesn't count everything that I lost inside the house.
Do you have
That's just
flood
to get in
insurance?
now. No.
You don't? Okay.
My wife had checked into it 20 years ago when all this other stuff started. And at that time, they quoted her a price of $1,000 a month plus your mortgage, because we weren't in a federal floodplain.
yep, I had that same thing, only mine was a little bit more.
Yeah, so I
And
mean.
it did not cover your basement.
Right, it doesn't cover
It starts your
certain
first floor
things.
on.
Right.
And it doesn't cover the shed that went floating away, it doesn't cover your backyard, so it's like,
Didn't
well,
cover my pool,
it's like,
didn't
well,
cover
forget
pool or
it. But
fencing.
Hunter, did you not tell me though, that through FEMA, like, we're not just gonna get money, it's just low interest loans,
That's
correct?
Yeah.
No, I ain't paying interest.
There's all kind of potential through FEMA. They've got different opportunities, but it depends on what they're gonna offer.
Yeah.
I mean, my
Say that
point,
again, Dave, I'm sorry, I missed, what'd you say?
I say there is all kind of potential through FEMA
Oh,
that they can do different conceptual dealings. I've seen them, and again, I raised this last month. I've seen them raise a house multiple feet off the ground, and I've seen them do mitigation efforts so that it doesn't happen again. But when they're doing those mitigation efforts, they're gonna limit the use of certain parts of your house. Like, let's say they're gonna put floodgates in your basement. If you got those floodgates there, you're not gonna be having a family room down there, and the refrigerator or anything else. I've seen them lift heaters and everything else up to different locations. So they have done those to try to mitigate the damages of the future, okay? But I've also seen them pay for damages. I've seen multiple damages. I've seen furniture replaced a number of years ago. I can't tell you what they're doing today because I haven't been as closely involved with it in the past 10 years.
With increasing disasters.
Yes, so,
You know.
so are they lessening their
We're
effort?
small one compared to things that are happening elsewhere. We
I'm
really
sure.
are small. That's just why I want our bridge taken care of.
I mean, my point is, I get it. I'm not crying or looking for a handout. I understand all that. And I'm good with what's going on, but I can't do it again if it happens again. I'm
Oh,
done.
I understand that.
I mean, I'll be living in the back of my car or something, you know what I mean? This is, I don't know, something's, and I know it don't happen overnight, but
How many apartments can you fit in this building?
Well, you see the chairs?
Like I said earlier, we are looking at it, and the engineers are doing what they can with it, and until we get the emergency permits from the state, that's kind of the waiting game right now, but it hasn't fallen on deaf ears, it certainly hasn't, so.
Tom did share with me that one thing we need to consider with the emergency permits, when we get them, we need to prepare to do work with them too.
You're right.
So we have money left over for equipment rentals, and in the 2024 budget that has been started to be drafted, there is money expressly for equipment rentals and material purchases just for flood control. It's probably about $60,000 if I remember correctly. So it's not everything you need, but it's more than a drop in the bucket.
It's a start.
Yeah, I think you could start to a certain degree this year with money that's left over, or you can spend from the fund balance. But that runs into some of our other challenges that we're gonna be talking about more.
so I don't know what we're gonna do. But first we gotta say.
So we're gonna end up looking at all kind of alternatives here. And it's not just a 1 month decision because we're also spending a lot of money. Money that we didn't plan on, and as every one of our budgets, if you have your house or your car or whatever, you've gotta look for it. And we've gotta look for it. So we're gonna have to determine what we're gonna cut back on or what we're gonna do to enhance the budget so that we have the money to make the repairs necessary. But at this point, I think we're pretty committed to looking at the whole solution, because we're looking at the whole stream, and digging it out, I guess, not digging it out, but dredging it
That would be helpful.
is a big start. Nobody know, I mean, we're talking about 1,000-year war storm. None of us anticipated that.
Yeah, but this has happened before to us without
Yes.
the 1,000 years.
Yeah, but now we're looking at the
In
dredging.
2020, it happened 2 days on a Sunday and then again on a
Yep.
Tuesday.
Yeah, I remember
Had the
that.
basement dried out Monday night, whoop, here it came again on Tuesday.
So we can't control that.
Nope.
But at this point, we're gonna try to control the way that we move along. Just try to bear with us a little bit here. I know it's hard to hear when you're trying to struggle through and you don't have a life preserver, so to speak. We are trying to do something, and we are going to address what we can as we can. We're halfway through the year, and naturally our budget is halfway through the year too, so So we can't make money up here any easier than anybody else. As a matter of fact, we can't even come back and say, well, we're gonna raise taxes next month so that we can't do that, nor would it be fair to do that. So, we're gonna look at where we can and see what we can do between our engineer and our solicitor, the board itself, our road crew, and our emergency services. We're trying to figure out what we need to do at this point. And I'm gonna tell you, if we do everything that we possibly can right now, there's no guarantee, because all that sediment's gonna fill back up the next storm.
No, I don't.
So, hopefully we can get PennDOT to do their share at the bridge, and with your help in contacting elected officials and everybody else, they're gonna get their ears bent a little bit. That'll get them operational. And if we can get the water flowing, that's gonna relieve a lot of this. That's the whole problem. So, we can't stop the trees from coming down, but we can remove them when they do. It's gonna take everybody seeing it, because we don't have eyes, we don't have cameras on the creeks. So when you guys see something like that, give us a call. It's a community effort, and I know some people have called, and we've got, you can ask Keith, those guys have been out there walking through this creek, probably more than they care to imagine throughout the last several weeks.
Well, even prior to this storm, our creeks, these guys went in there and cleaned out
Yeah.
a tremendous amount. And these are probably the cleanest that our waterways have been in probably 20 years. And I also wanted to kind of piggyback with what Dave said too. There might be some changes coming down the pipeline that not everybody's gonna agree with, and not everybody's gonna be happy about it. At the end of the day, I think we need to look at the big picture here, and the community needs to realize that there's gonna be changes coming. It might inconvenience you for a little bit, it might change things up. I think we can all agree that we're tired of getting our basements flooded out, so.
You can't stop all that water, because we had 7 foot of water at Mays Grove.
Yep.
We're never gonna stop it all. We're never gonna stop it, let's put it that way. We're gonna have to learn to deal with it.
The railroad overpass,
Yeah.
it's over.
But we are working on it, folks, so please bear with us.
I'm getting there.
And our hearts are with you. They are.
Well, I wanna bring back up the Cornerstone Bridge damage.
Yes.
So, like I said, I went out firsthand, was out there with those guys that night. The bridge bounces. The bridge is water's going under the bridge instead of through the culvert. It's to the point now where we've known that this is the bane of our existence in Maidencreek. When we have a storm coming, we know that Cornerstone Bridge, some way, somehow, is gonna dam up and flood out.
And I paid $10,000 premium for that lot. What a fool. What a fool.
You're not the only ones that have done that, though. People like being near the creek, and, but I agree, it's.
Have you enjoyed it for all those years now, until now?
Until they built the half a doubles. The minute they built those duplexes, half a doubles, whatever you wanna call
That's
them,
when
is when
everything
our
went-
problems
That's
began.
when everything started. Yep.
Before that wooded property
6 years
held
it was
it.
good.
Well, I can guarantee you this last storm, you would've got water regardless.
Well, I don't think it would have been what it was, but that's guessing.
Yeah.
And again, all the property owners, when you buy property, you wanna use it. Every one of us wants to use it, and how many people have moved out of cities to move toward areas like this? So they're moving to get away from crime and everything else. So they're coming to communities like ours because they're nice communities.
Your neighbor's diagonally from you, so on the other side of Cornerstone, but on the other side of the bridge also.
Yeah, Bill,
They've lost, it's technically, I guess, township land there, but I think they do mow it for us, right, along the creek there.
Who
But
was
we,
it?
are you talking about the one on the other, on Cornerstone, but catty corner from her across the
Yeah,
bridge?
across-
Christmas Village.
Oh, he's lost some, did you see that?
yeah, like I said, I think the township owns a line through there.
Yeah, he thinks it's
But-
his all the way to
And
the
he
creek.
mows it,
Yeah, I
which
know.
is fine.
Yeah.
But point being is that has eroded so much, and this
Oh, it
last
has.
storm, it must have pulled around there and it took
It
a
did.
huge carve into
It is a big carp.
So that whole thing should get sloped back and pulled back, and so there's a lot of work that's gotta go on in there. And like I
Well,
said,
if you look at my property, it goes
Mhm.
like that.
I saw it first
Not
time.
when I bought it, it was like that. But after the first flooding, after the doubles, whatever, after that first flooding, it had come up to my pool and my pool walls were breached, but it never went over it like this.
Well, let's see what we can do. That's what
Thank you.
we're gonna look at it. As for the bridge,
Is there anything that you're thinking about putting on the table?
Yeah, I'd like to pull it out.
Oh, so would I. I second and third and fourth that, and I'm not.
I think there's a lot of implications.
I'll
before
even
we
help
consider
knock you
doing
down.
Something like that, I mean,
Who's the
what's,
guy with
what's
the
the
backpack
cost
with
of
the
doing,
same
can we have order, please? What's the cost of doing some of the maintenance or corrective actions that you talked about at the bridge?
I would have to get with Keith. I don't know what the clean out situation is, how much work the township's going to be able to perform.
Well, I mean, obviously, the water is fully running underneath those aluminum culverts.
Right.
And if you're staring, if you're in the creek staring at Cornerstone Play Lot, the left one especially, there's been so much debris that is pushed underneath that culvert, it is now like this.
Right.
So
We're not gonna
it would,
fix
it
that.
would be, any fix is gonna be a Band-Aid on that.
Right.
And plus that triangle, that's fallen off.
Yeah,
All the wood in there is rotted out.
Yeah, it's not even connected anymore.
And that's why I think this is just, this has been a known problem, it's been a big issue, and this is why I said what I said about it's gonna inconvenience some neighbors, it's gonna inconvenience the school district. There's multiple ways in and out of that development. It's not like the Melrose Place where they got one way in, one way out. I'm sorry, I think we deal with the inconvenience for a little bit, and we tear it out, we do it right, put a clear span in there at some point in time
what are we looking at cost-wise?
to pull it out.
Yes.
Can we see a Schlauff will do it for pro bono?
So I think we can pretty easily get a quote for what that would be. I suspect there's also permitting costs that are associated with that.
I think we could throw it under the emergency permitting,
Okay.
possibly. I wouldn't put past the fact, if you want to try and repair it correctly, that will exceed removing it.
Can we cut the bottom out of that altogether?
I don't think so, because I think you'll jeopardize the integrity of the arch then. I think you would have to, when we have just the arch and no bottom, you generally have a concrete curb on both sides that is tied into. So I'm afraid that you would jeopardize the arch.
It's just a poor design altogether.
Yes.
Well, it is a poor design, but I mean, it's the existing bridge, and my concern is also like with emergency services that may need to travel through there and to fix it until we have because we don't have the 1 million or 1.5 million to replace it. That's what that would cost
I'm not looking to
approximately
replace
for
it
doing
right
that. If you could estimate what the cost would be is for the repair work that you were referring to earlier and the clean out
Okay,
of this bridge.
okay,
Yeah, if you get us
That
all
would-
the
that would be
costs,
beneficial.
as well as removal.
okay.
Because we know that the cost of replacement completely to do it right is astronomical.
Yeah, you're gonna wanna get grants for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing is there's a pedestrian bridge, 50 yards or less than 50 yards downstream, so pedestrians are gonna be able to cross.
Right.
Emergency vehicles, we can discuss that with the emergency services and get any feedback from them. I'm sure that there will be some type of time delay, but I don't know if it would be considered, what's the correct word, detrimental or, because there are other ways in and out, but we can
Yeah, and then also,
dot our i's and cross our t's.
should there be a weight limit put on this bridge under the
At this
circumstances?
time,
It
I
would seem
don't,
to me that
We just want more tractor trailers to
So-
drive over it and pay
Chuck,
for
that's
years.
solution. Chuck can put in that spirit.
Yeah, I know, charging with somebody else.
Which, it's not posted with the bridge, but there is a weight limit on, Spirit.
There's a weight
on
limit
the
on
road,
Schaefer.
is it in your traffic ordinance?
There's a weight limit on Schaefer Road, and I see a water tanker.
Yeah.
Hey, the
I'll-
Schaefer Road Bridge,
Cross that all the
What's
when we took over that, didn't we were supposed to remove that weight limit. So we were supposed to remove the weight limit for Schaefer Road when we accepted the bridge.
No, well, it's still there.
It's 14 tons combination weight, but it would seem to me that this Cornerstone Bridge should have a weight limit to put because it's obviously not in the best shape here.
It wasn't supposed to still be there.
It's up and running.
I think it's,
20,000 gallons
my
of
opinion is
water per minute.
twofold. You're gonna tear out that blockage, number one. Number two, just like East Western, these guys on Cornerstone have an issue with speeding going down the street too. You're not gonna have speeding unless they, unless you hear the Dixie horn going off, you're gonna be fine. I just think that, I just think that it's been our problem, but I think looking, yeah, I'm okay with looking into the price. I'd be curious. The demo price is gonna be a lot cheaper. This is gonna be dealing with DEP and what we gotta do to
Let's
re-embud it.
come back next
That's
month,
fine.
and we'll have your answers as far as pricing goes, as far as emergency vehicles goes, as
Yes.
far as those items that you can make, dedicated.
Well, and the connectivity, because generally you want connectivity between developments,
do.
otherwise you're forcing people to go to 73 and then around possibly 222, depending where they're going, where normally they would just be able to connect.
Well, you know, when I moved in there, the only way I could get out of there was to go up the Blandon Meadows Parkway and come out onto the Fleetwood Blandon Road.
We didn't have all
It was
those
a dead
other
end
roads.
right past Ann Street. It was a dead end the other way. It was a dead end the other way. Like, there was nothing on my side. We
I
had
came
to
in
go
Schaefer.
over the construction bridge and cut up through Blandon Meadows Parkway and come out by the post office. So,
Yeah, so if you could.
So we'll see.
I did it.
Yeah, let's look and see. We'll come back next month and we'll look at it and see where it costs. Thank you. Okay. Robotics, I guess. Yeah, I guess we're at robotics now.
So Robotics is a software program that the township would like to use to do a full inventory of all of our roadways. The cost you see there, $5,000, would.
Does he have anything? You good?
Finish up, I'll jump in there for now.
Oh, okay.
I stepped out prior to the inopportune moments.
Sorry. So that cost of $5,000 would provide us the software access for the entire year. Sorry, not the entire year, 12 months. And then that would do a full inventory of all of the roads using an AI program, which basically looks for every imperfection in the roadway that AI can pick up. Basically, what we would be able to do is objectively provide evidence to suggest which roads are in which condition. So you don't have the loss of time associated with multiple guys from the road crew going out for an entire week to inventory every road, having a different viewpoint depending on who that person is who's doing the inventory. We can take care of all of the roads in 2 days, map them into GIS with Tom and Systems Design doing that work for us. We can integrate that into our road planning as we move into future years and assess accurately, rather than just hopefully, how much that cost would be depending on, do we need an overlay? Do we need a seal coat? Do we just need to provide sealant on crack sealing? Those different pieces, I think, will get much more accurate using the software.
Can you describe the AI that you're talking about that would actually be
So
performing this?
what you would do, this is an iPhone, but it has to be an Android. They'll provide the Android and then we'll ship it back to them when we're done. You put this on your dashboard, you turn it on the video, open the app, and the app will record all of your video as you go. When it goes back to the company, they'll break it into 12 images every second. And then they will be able to overlay all of the data for all of our roadways with the pictures, with the AI summarization of the roadway condition, and highlighting of all of the imperfections they find. That includes rutting, tears, cracks, alligator cracking. I don't think it picks up speed bumps in the same way. We don't have speed bumps, but if there's ruts that are above a certain threshold where you're jumping up and down.
I saw a demo at Hershey. It has a kind of like a gimbal into it, so if it hits a speed bump like he's saying, it automatically, the AI automatically looks at it, and what it'll do is let their team, it'll kind of hone in on that, and their team looks at it, reviews it, and says, okay, it's just a speed bump, it's not a pothole, then they negate it.
Yeah.
But they address it if it's a roadway that's not.
Correct. And then it stores it every.
I think it's 12 images per second.
But the image that goes up on the system, like they show a photo every 10 feet.
You can do every 10 feet, and then they overlay on the map, I think, every intersection to intersection what the condition is. So the way that we were using like the excellent, good, average, needs improvement, poor, it would do that on a 1 to 5 rating, every intersection to intersection through their objective standards. And they use the same model, the PACER model actually, that we used in the road plan. So everything would line up really well. That 5,000 would also pay for us to assess any of the state roads that we wanted to as well, up to 6 miles worth of state roads. So we wouldn't touch 222 or anything,
Wow.
because we only have 44.43 miles, but you need to pay a minimum of 5,000, and they charge you $100 for every mile. We can do any of those roads, like Maidencreek Road, and then you can get on the state and say, look, this is in really poor shape. This is important for us to get taken care of, something along those lines.
So how does it deal with the oil and chip roads?
So what the PACER model does is when you have a 5, it gives you a recommended set of repairs. So I think when it's 5, it's light maintenance, so that can include crack sealing when you come up to something. When you have a 4, it might say seal coat. When it has a 3, it will say something along the lines of seal coat to overlay. When it's a 2, overlay. When it's a 1, it can be overlay to full reclamation. It doesn't really identify seal coat being oil and chip versus chip seal that we are proposing in the future.
It's a generic, it's just a general term.
Yeah.
So how does it deal with, and my question,
to tax it?
well, when it does, when you're gonna survey that type of road,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
what does, yeah, how
Looks-
well does it work with that, and?
Yeah, it looks for imperfections that the II can pick up. So it won't pick up individual chips butting out or something along those
Well,
lines.
I don't expect that.
But there's also user input to it too, so whereas if we did a project like that where we seal coated it, Hunter can go and say, hey, well, we did this road from here to here, and they can input that into the system. It's kind of like how we did the storm network, or we're working on that, I guess, how we're compiling a GIS database of that. It's all integrated on the map, and, yeah, so there's definite user input to it, but it has to come from that.
Yeah, I don't foresee there being a problem with it not being able to differentiate though from oil and chip roads versus asphalt roads. Like if, because there's more imperfections, you would say, in an oil and chip
Right,
road,
that's-
because the chips are closer to the surface. It's not gonna have a problem saying this whole road is completely destroyed. I mean, some people might say that,
We've
but
heard that comment before.
yeah.
No, but I was just wondering how it dealt with and how accurately it dealt with.
Yeah.
What was the failure rate you said?
The error rate is up to 10%, and that's where we come in to try and fix it. That 10% is overkill. So it's detecting that this is worse, or this crack is longer than it actually is.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't get a 10% under rate, you would get a 10% over. So that's where it's really important for Keith, myself, and anybody else who is driving to say, no, that wasn't the entire stretch of the road, that was just the way the image was taken or something along those lines.
So the whole road plan that you had drawn up may get reconstructed
Yes.
completely.
I mean, the finances are all still gonna be fine. It's just, I think, a better prioritization that you guys can do
Of
with
roads.
data rather than our observation and instinct. And I
Yes.
think the AI is gonna be far more accurate to the tooth. The other thing is, Keith, if he had to go out and do this, would probably be doing this for multiple weeks, on top of everything else that he has to do. If it wasn't just Keith, then you have maybe all 6 guys going out and doing their own individual inventories. One guy's eye is gonna see things differently than another guy's eye, and that's where I think you don't get as objectively accurate. And for this price point, being able to pay for it with liquid fuels, I think you guys are gonna get a lot of assurance moving forward about what are the conditions of our roads.
But somebody still has to drive it.
Correct, yeah, somebody, so they cannot drive like a maniac, so.
Well, no, but it's gotta be a dedicated drive for this purpose only.
For 2
Right.
days, yeah.
Yeah, 2 days.
Yeah, so what we'll do actually is, we'll send them a map of how, of what roads we wanna do. They will create turn-by-turn directions
Okay,
for
so
us
that's,
to
I was
inventory.
gonna ask that too, how, that they're gonna have to
Yeah.
know exactly which roads and.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're paying for the data for a mile. We're not paying for the turn. So like if we drove longer, we wouldn't get charged for that time. It's that they only are processing the data for us, overlaying it in GIS for the actual places that we've identified we want that data. So like if they have to drive on 222 to get behind the lake at some point, or if they have to go 73 into Onalani Township,
No,
we're
we-
not also scanning Onalani Township's roads or something like that.
It picks up where the GPS is.
Well, it should know what our township roads are at that point.
They'll have a map.
I personally think it's relatively cheap. Like I said, I went to the seminar, or the session that she did at the Hershey, and, yeah, it's not just the AI, you're also paying, or it's included in their fee, which I think is relatively good, is you're also paying somebody to sit there and review the data that the AI's come up with too. So it's not like they just run it through the system and let the AI do whatever and send it to you. They're fully invested in making sure, because this is kind of a newer technology anyway, they're invested in making sure that their AI is spot on. That's why their rate has gone tremendously. I mean, a 10% rate, and then they do it conservatively is pretty impressive, and it's that accurate coming from it. But
How long have they been out there doing this?
For a few years, they were they were bought by Michelin, I think, 2 years ago to really start scaling this program up because it was a tech startup. So Michelin is using it as part of their
data for their vehicle, their studies on tires and stuff.
Yeah.
That's why they purchased them, because they saw this as a very lucrative thing for them.
One thing they told us they would be doing in the future as well is overlaying traffic data that they get from Google. So they'll be able to overlay the amount of use per data over the condition of the roadways. I think they said that would be rolled out next year.
Yeah, it's coming.
So we'll be able to see that sometime around January, February, March, somewhere in that range.
So based on the condition of the road plus the use of the road.
You can see the volume of traffic.
They're going to predict what your,
Destruction level
degradation
is.
is going to be, based on time.
Yeah, which is exactly what the road plan actually said too.
But
I'm just saying.
Like, we wouldn't get rid of Hunter's spreadsheet either, because there's some things in there that we would have, because we personally don't have the ability to input into the system. Like, he could make the phone call and say, hey, I need this added, yada, yada, they'll do that.
But it could validate.
But we can have his spreadsheet and work simultaneously with the AI information too.
Yeah, well,
And you can export, you didn't bring it up, you can actually do reports right from it. So
That's
if we
nice.
wanna,
Stop stealing my product.
it's pretty cool. It's,
Yeah, well, and I think the benefit that this will create is that when you guys make the decision to invest, whether it's $200,000 or whether it's $600,000 in roads, you're gonna have the assurance that those are the roads that we need to prioritize today, because that data shows it. And I think that's gonna be the benefit, is we know we're getting dollar for dollar, better on our buck, rather than using a different format.
But can they come up with a program that does streams and?
I think they're focused on roads, but I can certainly ask.
wouldn't matter,
Oh, there's been some tires in the stream too.
You have to get somebody in a little canoe to go down.
Yeah, there we go.
Do we need a motion tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, if you do it tonight, I think we'll have data to show you in a PowerPoint by
I
October.
was gonna say October, yeah.
Okay.
That means October's meeting's gonna be late.
I'll make the motion that we go ahead and procure the Road Biotics road inventory software and assessment inventory system using the liquid fuels funds.
All right, I'll second that.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna try and be quick with pension valuation report. Long story short, you got the valuation report, it's in the binders, we're in good shape. No two ways about it. With us being in the shape that we are in, I think it's important that, because that's taxpayer money that's sitting in the fund and we have an excess of funds to a pretty significant degree, I think that it would be important for the board to consider how do we de-risk the assets and potentially try to leverage the excess that we have for the benefit of the community. So what I propose is putting together a working group of a board member, one of the guys in the union, and myself, to look at that and potentially look at some changes to the plans to decrease our risk and also look to leverage those funds in a more effective way long-term, so that you're preserving what's in there as excess, so you're not having problems funding your pension, but that you're also not leaving a significant amount of money just to accrue for the purpose of accruing.
So what are the options for leveraging that you're considering?
There's a lot of options, benefit increases, de-risking of your assets by creating more investments in stable funds rather than in volatile or risk funds. When I say risk or volatile funds, that's like individual companies or hedge funds versus stables being in treasuries, bonds, different things like that. Our actuary has kind of showed that we have a larger than average exposure to risk, which is part of the reason we've done well. But because we are doing so well right now, it's probably time to work on de-risking ourselves. And then the other method I think we should talk about is decreasing the anticipated rate of return so that we're prepared for downturns to happen.
Well, we've had them.
Yes. So in this actuarial valuation, you'll see that the actuary decreased our anticipated rate of return long-term from 7% to 6.5%.
Yeah, I saw that.
That I think is a really good move because I think that's reflective of where we're actually being. But I think that working group would be able to look at some more options about how to use some of those excess funds more effectively.
I was running scared because I know that the pension plan programs have been a major issue throughout the Commonwealth. And we have been very fortunate.
I think throughout the country too, and we're in an excellent position.
Yeah. So, do you fix the tire that's not flat, or, I mean, there's any number of things. I agree with taking a look at it.
I think that's what you're asking to do.
Yeah,
We're not doing
if you're
it with
just
it.
taking a look at it,
Yeah.
see where we can go. I just don't wanna dive into a pool that has no water.
Sure. Yeah, and I think by setting up that working group to take a good look at it with the actuary and potentially even with
And the investor that
yes.
we're dealing with.
Yes.
Yes.
And have that conversation and come back to the board with changes if they're necessary.
Yeah, I just don't wanna see down the road where we're having to figure out how to fund it.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm okay to talk about looking into
Yeah.
it. Do we need a motion for that?
No.
But
You need a solicitor's report though.
Yeah.
Oh, I skipped you again, I'm sorry.
I'm letting you finish. I was gonna jump in before we got to business, the next
Okay.
section. So you gotta finish up.
So the last item there is discussion of strategic planning workshop. Now that we have dates for the conditional use hearing set, I wanted to see if you guys wanted to look at setting a date in September, or if some of your mind has changed about when you want to try and accomplish this.
I think September makes sense.
can you message out some dates?
Yeah. I'll use the conditional use hearing once again.
Well, we're not done with conditional use hearings, though.
No.
That's gonna be my report.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to ask, because if you don't want to do September, we don't have to do September. But, I'm trying not to saddle you guys with too many meetings in a month.
But this is really important.
Okay, so give us some dates. If we can make them, we can make them. If we can't. Okay,
It's awesome.
solicitor.
About time.
It's only 10 o'clock.
No, so, just piggybacking on that, the warehouse conditional use hearings are continuing. Our next hearing is scheduled for October 24th. We have another one scheduled.
August.
August 24th. August 24th. We have another one scheduled for September 5th and September 20th, all at 6:30 in this room. Where they are right now is the applicant finished their case in chief on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, August 8th. So the next step is the township is deciding whether it's going to present witnesses for its case. Thereafter, the neighbor parties will present their case, and then it could go back in where the applicant presents additional case in rebuttal. So again, the next one is scheduled for August 24th, which at this point, will be, bless you, will be up to the township to start presenting its witnesses. And that's all my report.
Okay,
August 24th is also the Park and Rec meeting.
yeah.
Gonna have it in the
So,
park in the same building.
how many people usually attend your meeting?
Depends, 5, 6 sometimes.
Okay,
I did talk with Eric about trying to schedule their meeting at Community Park, and then them having a localized meeting at Community Park, but also being able to look at the park and try and think about some of the ways that we can improve upon it too.
okay.
So I
So are
think
we not
if you're
coordinating?
comfortable with that.
Yeah, we'll have to advertise that though, right?
Yeah, yes.
So I apologize. It's one thing I guess we should make sure is that when we schedule these things, they're not in conflict with the township calendar. So-
So I think
Well, it's
how much
probably-
difficulty we
Oh,
have
it's-
here.
It's easier for us to deal with.
Right, we're coordinating with 30 people, so I apologize, but yeah, so we are and we are under court order to have 2 per month, so I literally think that was the only other
Yeah.
month that this group
That's
was
fine, we can make it
available,
work.
so- No, apologies. So,
Okay, we're gonna move on to the affirming of the purchase of 2018 Cam Superline trailer for $5,500. We already purchased that because the sale came about in a rapid fashion, and it's something that we truly need. We've rented a lot of equipment, and we've used it already since we've had it, since what, last week?
Yes.
So, this is just a formality at this point. So do I have a motion to affirm the purchase?
I'll make the motion that we affirm the purchase of the 2018 Cam Superline trailer for $5,500.
All right, I'll second.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so let's see here. We've got the appointments for various boards, and,
Do we have the resolutions?
yeah, we have a resolution also.
Yep. If you want to do 2023 first, then you don't have to be out of order for the appointments.
Okay, so consideration of resolution 27, 2023 on disposition of records.
So the resolution 27, 2023 is disposing of a number of records between 2007 and 2012, all of which are compliant with the Pennsylvania guidelines for records destruction. If you guys want to take more time, they are here in the boxes. There's a combination of bills, old payroll records, any number of different things along those lines that are able to be destroyed at this time.
What did we do before?
We keep them.
No, we just, I thought we.
Yeah, we have to do
this
it
We
each
did,
time.
yes. We
We
have
can
a
do
lot.
it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like every
Anytime you destroy records, the board needs to pass a resolution.
Yeah.
We have.
These didn't
in
fit that
excess.
criteria of that, or we can't
No,
lump
they
them
just
together?
took more time to review. This is a project
Okay.
Connor's kind of been working on for a while. So,
Good.
yeah, we wanted to try and get as many as we could at the same time because it's a time-consuming function, but we have gotten more than a few boxes out of here. Let's do this.
Okay. So we're getting rid of those. We need to have a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 27, 2023 on disposition of records.
Second.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now for the appointments for various township boards. Maidencreek Township Zoning Hearing Board alternate. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion that we appoint Chris Klein as a zoning hearing board alternate.
I'll second it.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. For the Maidencreek Township Authority, under 2729, do I have a motion?
I move that we appoint Thomas S. Avanosky as the Maidencreek Township Authority Board Representative.
I'll second it.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. Maidencreek Township Planning Commission, this is for an alternate position.
The planning commission was alternate.
No,
No.
Planning
No,
Commission was
it's-
not alternate.
No.
That was an alternate position that we just voted on.
The zoning hearing
Zoning
board was
hearing.
alternate, the township authority was not
Yeah, that
alternate.
wasn't,
And then we have,
yeah, good go. Now we have the planning commission.
right. Just wanna make sure this is right. I'll move that we appoint Gavin Milligan to the Maidencreek Township Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
All in agreement?
Aye.
And we've got some other positions that will be opening up shortly that we're going to fill as well, so. There's also a proclamation, and I wanna get this, since this was
I think you might have missed it.
a proclamation.
No, just, you went over it in your presentation.
Yeah.
Go back to 6.
Oh, that's 6, okay. Okay. So this is a proclamation recognizing the struggles of residents diagnosed with gastroparesis. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Maidencreek Township has the authority to declare their collective support for residents suffering with the diagnosis of gastroparesis within its jurisdiction. Whereas gastroparesis is a gastrointestinal disorder affecting people with delayed gastric emptying. Now therefore, in consideration of the above recitals, the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Maidencreek, Berks County, Pennsylvania, proclaims its support for residents and other community members suffering with this disease, declared by the chairman, myself, of the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Maidencreek this 10th day of August, 2023 AD. And do I have a motion to?
Well, I empathize with people who are suffering from various illnesses. I don't see how this is the job or position of our township to issue proclamations for conditions of this sort. I mean, there's any number of people suffering from any number of medical problems.
So we received a request from one of our residents, as this was done so by the governor of Pennsylvania for this one. I'll make a motion that we sign this proclamation. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Any need
second?
for executive session?
Yes.
Just announce that.
Yes. And thank you all for coming tonight, and we are